Someone's house is burning with a bright fire, not even giving the right to salvation. The wind helps the dark smoke spread around to fill the space and warn of trouble. No one expected it, but the lady remained in the burning estate. Panic loomed, trying to cover everyone present. However, a miracle happened. A blonde girl walks with Euclid. The beauty was none other than Urania, the eldest daughter of Count Vincent. His facial features showed in advance that he was a rather kind and sweet person. Two strange people stand opposite the main character. It would seem that they wish only good things, but the vile smiles on their faces prove the exact opposite. The voices note that the girl really saved the lady. The act was admirable, but it was completely unclear whether the heroine would benefit in any way. She'll have to pay for this. The frightened gaze switches to the jar of elixir. The unpleasant-looking woman continues to hold the flask in her hands, saying that she should drink the potion. It will take away your sight and your voice will fade. In her mind, it seemed like this was the best option. To save Euclid, he will have to become crippled. The lady continued to talk in an intimidating manner about the consequences, asking if the interlocutor understood what she was leading to while the jar was being opened. The yellow mixture poured like a waterfall onto the young lady, who had to accept the rules of the game. Rumors about everything that happened spread very quickly. Less than a week later, everyone was aware. On the same day, Urania's father offered to marry her to that lady's son, Cassius. The Duke of Euclid's family very quickly agreed to the proposal. It seemed that they were unable to refuse, and so after a while the young people got married. The couple's life was full of pleasure. They were always with each other, and everything was fine, if not for a letter from the girl's father, which spoke of the destruction of a protective artifact under the duchy. Confusion and sadness enveloped the heroine. She didn't want to let her family down, so she had no choice. The girl had to follow the order. The Duke shakes his interlocutor by the shoulders, accusing her of something. He can't wrap his head around how it happened that she dared to do such a terrible thing. The worst fears came true. The monsters broke through the barrier and filled the entire empire. There was nowhere to run. After everything that happened, the heroine began to be called none other than the unfortunate villain Urania. Sadness became an irreplaceable part of her soul. Immediately after everything that happened, the father turned away from the girl, who first used her to commit a crime. The blonde couldn't help but reproach herself and everyone who brought her down. Having taken the drug, the young lady signed her own death sentence. She was promised that the drug would only temporarily deprive her of sight and voice, but the poison of the parak herb infected the blood, leading to irreversible consequences. The girl realized too late what was happening, and by that time the poison had already managed to reach her heart. Lying on the bed and quietly dying, the lady thought about only one thing. Perhaps if she had a second chance, she would have acted completely differently. Thoughts about how exactly she would do this came into her head. The best solution would be not to sacrifice yourself for the sake of these monsters, who will then betray you. If the girl knew everything in advance, there would be an opportunity to start a new life filled with joy. It seemed that oblivion had already arrived, but the feelings were quite real. The hand lies on the soft bed, trying to feel at least something. The legs were without any shoes, and just like the rest of the body, they were lying on the sheets. Familiar feeling. Rising up, the girl looks at herself and realizes that she is alive. Confusion looms, blurring the soft features of his face. As soon as she turned and looked around the room, memories came flooding back to the lady. It was none other than her room in the castle. Putting her palm to her cheek, the beauty wonders what happened. Until recently, she understood that the end had come for her, but now everything has changed. The hand involuntarily reaches out to some sheet of paper lying on the nightstand. The letter indicates that it is now exactly 4 months before the incident. Surprise covers everything inside. Very soon, he would have to enter the duchy's cave and destroy the artifact. It is not clear how this happened. Confusion quickly changes to joy. Beauty couldn't believe that her prayers had been answered, and she was given a second chance to do everything right. A second later, a wet rag flies into your face. A voice says it's time to wash. It's hard not to find out who the owner is. Attempts to escape are futile. The maid Thalia is such a pain. She mocked the Duchess all the time, washed the Duchess with a cloth, and humiliated her because she is blind. Vile hands grab your face, forcing you to sit still. The maid never recognized the lady as her mistress because she did not spend the night with the Duke. My strength was exhausted, and it was useless to fight. Perhaps the best option was to give up, but the solution is not one of the simplest. The procedure is interrupted by a red-haired lady talking about the Duke's arrival in the capital. The exiled pigeon was proof of this. Leaving Urania alone, Thalia turns around disappointed, saying that everything happened faster than she thought. Even if you start preparing now, you still don't have enough time. Memories stick into your consciousness like a sharp needle. Shortly before going to the cave, the Count ordered to stop using the drug and then destroy the thing. This time, everything will be completely different. The headache gave me no rest. A long time ago, the girl began to notice that she had become dependent on the drug. She needed an antidote. Without a special yang plant, it is impossible to fully recover. She needed to get it, but this could only be done through Vincent's personal doctor. I didn't want to fill my head with bad thoughts, but someday I'll still have to do it. Shaking off the obsession, the beauty decides to think about it later. The first and most important task was to escape from the Duke's estate. No matter how beautiful it is a trap. Cassius must never find out that the girl was deceiving him all this time. Hands clutched the sheets. I didn't even want to think about the consequences, so I needed a clear plan. Determination was displayed on the young lady's face, making her mood clear. The young people should have gotten a divorce before it was too late for any action. Young Vincent arrived in town completely unexpectedly. The preparations were not completed, but Urania tried to carefully see what was happening. Without taking the drug for 3 days, she could vaguely discern the movements of the servants. The eyes seemed like glass, trying to catch at least some silhouettes. Thalia continued to scream, notifying everyone that the owner had arrived. The stately and handsome man was none other than Cassius. Adjusting his dark gloves, the man walks through the hall, causing everyone to freeze. Attention is attracted, so the guy, as if mockingly, asks if the heroine has heard that he has returned. According to him, perhaps she simply did not have enough time to hide in her room. Such remarks hurt, so my eyes drop to the floor. The blonde tries hard not to show it. She wouldn't want to make the guy too angry and take the blow on herself. The thought process is interrupted, and the next moment the girl commits a rather strange act. The shoes squeak on the floor, no longer together. Bowing her head and curtsying, Urania seems to be honoring her master. This could not help but surprise even the woman herself. Emotions are not reflected on the young man's face. It is difficult to read even a word without knowing what to expect from it. Perhaps the young owner did not appreciate the greeting, or perhaps the girl should have greeted her more gently. They are husband and wife, then why not? Deciding to change the subject, the man touched the girl's clothes. She wore a nightie, but according to him, she was not allowed to do this outside her room. The young lady grabs her clothes with her hand, while Cassius does not close his mouth. The next quip about how she shakes is definitely not one of the best. The eyes slowly filled with tears. It seemed that soon there would be no time to hold back. The heroine really tried to find a dress, but her vision did not allow it. Without having time to say a word, being mute, the beauty hears another banter, and then Vincent turns around and heads in the other direction. Emotions slowly poured over the edge, intending to spill out. Someone's stern voice called out to the heroine, asking what she forgot here. Thalia abruptly grabs the fragile hand by the wrist, continuing to scream indignantly. She didn't like this behavior. Bowing at the master's feet, the maid apologizes, saying that she thought Urania was sleeping and therefore did not keep an eye on her. It sounds fake. Asking for punishment, the woman squeezes the poor mistress's hand even more tightly. She doesn't care about pain at all. Vincent indignantly glares at his interlocutor, asking what right she has to such treatment. The maid just looks away in fear. Lavender eyes look menacingly at the interlocutor. Anger flows in a continuous stream, filling the entire space. Taking advantage of the moment, Urania snatches her wrist from Thalia's hands, and then sadly, as if seeking support, looks at her husband. She doesn't understand this kind of concern, but it's still worth finding out. Carefully examining the place, the girl notices that fingerprints are still visible on the light skin. Pain tries to take over the entire body. Gently pointing to the place of pain, the blonde closes her eyelids. The maid begins to make excuses, saying that she didn't grab her too much and that it's not her fault at all. Looks pathetic. The woman bows, expressing her sincere displeasure. This is happening for the first time, and everyone around is in shock. But the main character doesn't need this, otherwise she might not end up in a good position. The decision was made quite quickly. Feet, shod in light shoes, glide across the parquet, heading towards the right person. The angry expression still makes you wonder if the Duke really meant what he said. There is no time to think. You need to keep going. A smile spreads across the blonde's face. Perhaps by trying to become an exemplary wife, taking the initiative into her own hands, she will be able to get something in return. Approaching even closer, Urania stops almost a step away from her husband. It would seem that they are looking at each other, but the man should not have known about the slow return of vision. The surprised expression freezes, while the owner notices that she can walk. He thought that she could hardly stand on her feet, but it turned out to be the opposite. The blonde doesn't know what to say. It's quite strange to try to get out of the situation, but she has to come up with something. It is advisable to do this urgently. The next decision quickly slips through, and a fragile hand reaches out to the man as if trying to grab onto something. The palm, inside a beautiful black glove, was twice as large as expected. A careful look runs up the body. The girl shakes hands, which looks quite strange from the outside. It's hard to imagine what her goal is. Slight anger is reflected in the man's eyes. He is not particularly annoyed by this behavior, but it is quite difficult to understand what motives this girl is pursuing. Exhaling air, the interlocutor begins his tirade. He noticed that the lady had changed, but did not expect her to completely lose her fear. Strange sensations looking at all this. The main character's facial expression changes in a split second. Not understanding what just happened and why she's doing this, she tries to calm down. Looking somewhere to the side, Urania, somewhere in the depths of her soul, understands that he is right. She is no longer afraid of anything because she managed to die and be here again. Gently running her finger over her gloved palm, the beauty tries to start a conversation. She needs to see the clearing that was mentioned in the conversation a long time ago. Still not letting go of Vincent and trying to win over the man as much as possible, the interlocutor asks if this can be done. Pulling out his limb, the young man did not even raise an eyebrow at any requests. The only question remained, was she up to something? Out of nowhere, a guy with gray hair appeared in front of the people, Guile Desmond. He is none other than the butler of the Amon estate. The gaze switches to the man. The main character knows exactly who it is, because only this person treats her well without any reproaches or disobedience. Not even willing to listen to the greeting, Cassius turns around, ordering everyone to return to their rooms. The blonde doesn't pay attention, as she wonders if the servant fulfilled her request. The cute boy turns to his lady, about to say something. Perhaps his words will be associated with a promise. The girl turned out to be right, because the butler says that they have cleared the road to the lake. The only downside is that they are not allowed to go too far into the forest. The unexpected detail in the form of a lake greatly amazed the heroine. She knew about the clearing, but she didn't think at all that there was a body of water somewhere nearby. The next step, again to meet the Duke, was what was needed. The blonde needs to find out more about this place at any cost, to be sure. Folding his arms across his chest, taking a militant pose, the guy frowns. The question is asked, and he really wonders why Urania needs all this. Trying to pretend to be a caring wife, the girl again grabs her husband's hand, saying that, having heard about his return, she asked to clear the road of snow. A man would probably want to relax there. The efforts were not appreciated because Vincent became wary. He suddenly became very interested in how she knew about the lake. Continuing to smile without showing it, the girl says that she noticed his habit of going there often. Everyone knew about this, including the servant. The lake is famous for the parrot grass that blooms there, which has poisonous properties. Only in water does the plant acquire a healing effect, and Cassius constantly goes there for various reasons. Gestures of goodwill have almost lost their meaning, just as hope has been lost. The young man's ardor did not subside, trying to find out where such information came from. Deciding to stand until the last, the lady remembers her mother, who, according to her, told her about this a long time ago. Once again, tearing out her palm, the guy says that she should better forget about this lake, otherwise there may be bad consequences. The girl seemed to not want to let the guy go. The small hand clings again, as if begging. Humiliated, the main character only continues to ask and insist on her own. It is impossible to give up what you have planned just like that. Cass's patience had clearly run out. Almost shouting, the man orders him to be left alone and to stop testing his already shaky patience. Disappointment and quiet horror slowly mix. The girl did not expect such an attitude towards herself, although she perfectly understood what she was getting into. The opinion quickly changed, but the Duke refused to carry her back if she suddenly became cold. Euclid was grateful. Out of nowhere, a red-haired person appeared. The maid notifies that they have brought a cape for the mistress, which will keep her warm. The cold crept under the skin, threatening to freeze everything inside. Exhaling steam, the beauty realized that perhaps she had not dressed for the weather. A thoughtful gaze settled on the interlocutor, asking if it was normal for her to walk like this. It was obvious that she was cold, but she didn't want to admit it. Lightweight slippers with little insulation are more like flip-flops. Obviously don't help. Urania's shoes are completely inappropriate. Lowering her sad eyes, the blonde thinks to herself about shoes. She really tried to find something, but her vision ruined all her plans. Deciding not to dwell on the Duchess's strange behavior, the young man suggests moving on. In a past life, the heroine hid from Cass, trying with all her might to hide her deception. But this time, everything will be completely different. Barely keeping up with the tall figure, the lady was only thinking about how to establish contact. The first step was to start a conversation in order to discuss at least something before the divorce. Turning half a turn, the man asks what happened because for some reason the girl started touching his back. The main character needed to talk no matter what, so she grabbed the Duke's palm. It wasn't that simple. The blue gloves got in the way very much, preventing me from concentrating and finishing the job I started, which is extremely annoying. Without trying to do anything else, the blonde seemed to fall silent, but after a second, Vincent offered to carry her in his arms. Putting his fingers to his chin, he thought about it, and then said that this was not such a bad idea. The girl found herself in the arms that held her tightly. The young master is clearly focused on something else. Snowflakes peacefully fall to the ground, turning into water. Two young men follow a path leading directly to the lake, through a forest of dense trees. The beauty of the world around us is one of the best things. Pleasant impressions will remain for a long time. Looking around, the blonde admires nature. The gaze involuntarily switches to the person next to you. She herself asked him to carry her, but now the feeling of guilt did not leave the young heart. Perhaps the man is having a hard time. It is extremely difficult to carry such a weight with one hand, so strange sensations did not leave the Duchess's thoughts. The face became gloomy. An eccentric thought slipped into the beauty's brain. Perhaps if you offer your hug, the young man will feel much easier to carry. Attempts at hugging failed miserably. It seemed like there was nothing wrong here, but the guy literally recoiled. Clever eyes look persistently at Cassius. The girl seems to be trying to drill a hole with her gaze, not understanding why he behaves this way. Contempt seeps out. Perhaps it's just a suspicion or something else. The Duke says that she communicates with him as if she sees him clearly. The plan almost failed. Confusion covered the sweet face when the heroine remembered that he did not know about the vision that was returning, and he did not need to know. Silently looking somewhere behind the young man, the beauty tried to hush up the incident that had just happened. Awkwardness is one of the strongest feelings that makes you blush. The man, as if nothing had happened, looks into the distance. It's a strange occupation if you think about it, but no one is given a choice, so everyone does what they want. Light slippers in which graceful feet are shod fall to the ground. Enough time has already passed, and the couple managed to reach their destination. A strange thought haunted the young lady. The young man lowered it quite gently. There was no hint of anger or disdain for the person in his actions. The silence quickly breaks when Cass once again asks what the purpose of their coming here was. Some things remain a mystery. An already proven trick is the most reliable. The hand, but this time without a glove, gently touches the cold skin. Words don't want to come out, but deciding to sweep it all away, the lady says the reason. All because they didn't spend the first night together. Despite the fact that the young lady was planning a divorce, she still had to strengthen her power in the duchy. This will help a lot in the future. For the plan, everyone must know that the young people are a real couple, so the girl reaches out to the guy's hand, asking to preserve her honor. There is mockery in the interlocutor's voice. He believes that honor is out of the question. Everyone around always laughs at the lady because she is blind and dumb. The Duke continued to glare at the girl. She didn't like it very much, considering that everyone knew that she was an eyesore for Cassius. A smile spreads across her face when Vincent again asks why she needs honor after all. There is no benefit in this, and there never will be. Trying not to cry, closing her eyes, the girl communicates as usual. She is also a person. Then why shouldn't she think about this? The strange expression on his face does not leave the owner. Perhaps he is simply not pleased with everything that is happening, or perhaps something else is involved. Turning to the interlocutor, the man asks his question again. He doubts that this is true, but he has no choice. Changing the subject, the guy talks about how surprised he is that her body is holding up in such cold. Not even a minute passes before Cass, moving away from the beauty, begins to take off his clothes. The heroine barely manages to close her eyes tightly. Her memory was clearly failing her, because the girl even forgot about the fact that the guy comes here to swim, and that's why such things are happening now. Trying not to pay attention, the lady asks to pull herself together and finally begin the part to carry out the plan. The gaze is directed to the lake. Beautiful dark surface with sparkling snowflakes. There should be a Parak herb in here somewhere, as well as an antidote. You should not pay attention to a person who at that time is already waist-deep in water. The water is probably icy, and it's scary. The young man looks somewhere at his feet. He is looking for something, or just lost in thought. It is difficult to read emotions on a face that does not want to give even a single chance. Curled up into a ball, the young lady suddenly seriously wonders whether he is cold. In such weather, it is better to stay at home, or at least dress warmly, and not go into the ice hole. After a moment, the man plunges headlong underwater. Any hint of anyone's presence evaporates forever. Several minutes have already passed, but the silhouette still does not appear on the horizon. Panic seizes the beauty, and she begins to loudly call Cass. It seemed that no action brought any change. If he hears it, the young man is obliged to emerge. Things are only getting weirder by the minute. The only correct decision is spontaneous action. Hands find stones on the ground and immediately reach for them. After another 5 minutes, the heroine realizes that something is clearly wrong here. A person cannot be without air for such a long time. Fingers nervously squeeze the cape. I don't want to believe in everything that's happening, but it's not clear how it will all end if nothing is done. Sadness is reflected in every emotion. What needs to be done in order to finally see dark hair again? And then the Duke himself. Without thinking twice, the girl gets up from the ground and then runs towards the pond. It might not be the best decision later, but right now it doesn't seem to matter that much. The head, like the whole body, is slowly immersed in cold water. The limbs do not want to obey due to the sudden change in temperature. One memory comes to mind. A person not gifted with magic immediately dies. At the age of 10, the heroine managed to attend a funeral, and it was then that she met Cassius, a little boy who didn't know anything yet. As it turned out, his father, the previous Duke Euclid, died in the war, in battle. One of the saddest news for the kingdom. It was clear to everyone present that his son was in terrible pain, but he held on until the last. The kid did not utter a word, standing in splendid isolation. Even as a child, the girl was already sad about this. I didn't want to believe that it would all just end like that. The Duchess mentally begged her friend to hold on and wait until he was rescued. The last strength left the young body. The lake did not want to let her go, pulling her further into the abyss and hoping to capture everything around her. The girl slowly sinks to the bottom. It seems that in just a little while, there will be absolutely nothing good left in everything that is happening. Someone's hand suddenly grabs your wrist. The Duke noticed the drowning person in time, and deciding not to waste a minute, saves her. The face looks worried, while the young man tries to swim higher and higher towards the shore, hoping for a successful outcome. The sun illuminates the beautiful panoramic windows of the palace. It is already morning, or most likely noon, even if it is not known exactly how much time has passed. The dream is interrupted by a rag, which again ends up on the face. A female voice angrily notes that the heroine has finally woken up. Turning my head towards Thalia, I had to listen to her dissatisfaction. She knew that something would happen, and did not understand why she had to jump into the water for no reason. Rising sharply, the girl remembers what happened last night. She jumped there to save Cassius, and now she had absolutely no idea what condition he was in. The maid interrupts her thoughts, continuing her story that the owner jumped into the water to get the unlucky person. Soaked to the skin, he still managed to carry her to the castle. Just the mention of a man made my insides clench. How did it happen that he managed to remain completely unharmed? Trying to pretend that his vision had not returned, clutching at the sheets, his thoughts were still running in different directions. It's good that he's okay. A strange impulse came to my mind. Raising her hand, the girl abruptly throws the rag from her face. The maid's scream can be heard anywhere, especially at such volume. Saying that the person has gone crazy, Thalia reminds her that she slept for 2 whole days. You shouldn't behave so disrespectfully after everything that happened. Terror fills the mind. The main character knew that a certain time had passed, but had no idea about 2 days. Putting her hand to her head, the beauty realizes that she is burning. Fever was a possible consequence of diving into the lake. She was lucky that it didn't end so badly, as she survived. Turning her head, the girl notices a glass of medicine. This rubbish can be identified by its smell even from a kilometer away. The disgust at everything that is happening is very real. Count Vincent tried again and sent this decoction so that her vision and voice would never be restored. Without thinking twice, Urania quickly turns away, realizing that if this is not avoided, all her treatment progress will go in the wrong direction. This cannot be allowed. Tenacious fingers grab your chin, trying to pour the liquid into your mouth. Thalia is indignant at the lady's behavior, not understanding what has come over her today. The poison flows over the lips, never getting into the mouth in the right way in the right quantity. The heroine makes incomprehensible grunts, trying to resist. The glass falls to the floor and breaks on the tile with a characteristic noise, while the maid is already indignant with anger. Putting the brush to her face, the girl tries to understand whether she drank too much and how this will affect her condition in the future. Strange feelings prevail. There's no reason she shouldn't drink that stuff again. The antidote is the main thing, and if you continue in the same spirit, you can again find yourself on a slippery path. The door slowly opens, and the figure of Cassius appears in the room. The screams were so loud that even the Duke came to check what had happened. The maid stands silently with her head bowed, while the young man continues to ask what happened. Confusion seeps into the owner's voice. Thalia began to make excuses, saying what a wretch Mrs. was because she didn't want to take her medication. Cass's eyes look away with concentration. Realizing that the gaze is directed at her, The beauty only silently looks back, not daring to utter a word. Worries still creep into my head. A moment later, a tone full of anger ordered the maid to get out of here. Words of objection didn't really help, because the man remained unmoved. Closing her eyes, Thalia, realizing that it is useless to argue, decides that it might be better to leave. The consequences may be irreversible. The door slams shut. The person who had just disappeared clearly wanted everyone present to finally see her character. The young man finds himself next to the bed in no time, and then bends over the girl. The moment expresses the weakness of the young couple. Cassius intently examines the face of his interlocutor, while the beauty realizes that her vision has been restored even more. Now there is an opportunity to better see the guy's facial features. I want to literally plunge into it, trying to understand its entire essence. It may not be the best idea, but sometimes desires come first. A beautiful mirror showed the reflection of a young couple. Quite unexpectedly, the man suddenly asks why the lady jumped into that pond. There is no answer. The girl just silently looks somewhere at her bed, trying to avoid the interrogation, which has already begun. The hand convulsively squeezes the sheet. It's very hard to become someone you're not yet and reveal your secrets. The man's palm gently touches the opposite. Moving closer to the young lady's body, the young man demands an answer. He insists that he be told the truth so that all this will finally stop. The girl carefully takes her hand back, trying to refuse as gently as possible. You shouldn't spoil the relationship, but the answer doesn't come naturally. A quiet voice suggests that the girl is glad that Cassius is okay. She started all this just to save him, and that was important. Realization comes quite quickly. Lavender eyes look as if through the furniture, while the Duke realizes that his wife has dived after him. Sadness appears on the lady's face as she gently shakes her head, as if in agreement. There's no point in hiding now. Sudden changes in emotions are frightening. An indignant voice shouts, saying that the person should have known that diving there without magic is dangerous. The anger evaporates somewhere. A calm tone asks not to do this again, so that nothing bad happens. According to Vincent, even this time was enough for him. I didn't want to admit it, but it was an obvious thing. The young man is angry with the beauty. The motives are difficult to understand, but even so, everything is clear. The best solution is to simply apologize. The hand carefully reaches out to the dark suit the guy is wearing. The young man did not expect such a turn, and in order not to fall, he has to take measures. The hand tenaciously grabs the head of the bed. A silent question lingers on Cassius's lips as the couple continues to look into each other's eyes. Something is bound to happen. Tenacious fingers grab her husband's shoulder. The girl follows her plan, trying to do everything in the best possible way for her. A second later, something happens that definitely could not be expected. Clasping her hands, the blonde hugs the man standing next to her, trying to prove her gratitude. The next words are nothing more than sorry. She's really sorry that this happened. She didn't want to do this, but accidentally forgot about the properties of the reservoir. Trying to break away from the lady, the guy asks in surprise what that just happened. There was no need to blatantly take advantage of the moment like that. Urania looks quietly and intently at her interlocutor. She cannot explain her momentary impulse and her actions in general. Exhaling in disappointment, the guy asks how she can behave like this. This is not appropriate, and even if she's allowed, it does not mean anything. The girl is about to get up in order to try to take at least some action. A strange thought comes to mind about the blanket in which she is wrapped. Why does she need him? The realization came quite quickly. All this time, Urania was dressed inappropriately. A light nightie that was not suitable for meeting guests. Colors of shame filled the cheeks of the main character. She didn't want to admit it, but she really did wrong when she didn't check what she was wearing. The only correct solution came to mind quite quickly. Grabbing the blanket, the girl wraps herself tightly in it. The bell for calling the staff, which had been lying peacefully on the bedside table all this time, ends up in the hands of the Duke. The ringing echoes throughout all the chambers. A moment later, Thalia appears in the room. With folded hands, the person asks what happened and why she was called. The man asks about the treatment of his betrothed. mentioning the fact that the blonde could have swallowed parrot grass in the lake. In this case, you should take white grass. The realization seems to come out of nowhere. The white grass is the yang herb that was so persistently sought for use as an antidote. The gentleman asks to carry the medicines when ready, but not to force them to take them anymore. The maid agrees, while something inside Urania rejoices. The stern tone returns to its rightful place. One last warning, and one only. If the maid dares to humiliate his wife, then so does the master. Strange behavior haunts me. A man could not change so quickly and turn from a cold heart to a kind one. Misunderstanding covers the blonde. Did Cassius really take the side of his betrothed? And all this is the truth. Words from a few days ago pop up in my head. The girl asked to preserve her honor and leave at least a drop. I couldn't believe that the young man somehow listened to the young lady's words. Everything seemed fake, but there was no choice. You had to believe for your own good. Not even a few hours had passed before the dark-haired maid stood in front of her mistress, asking about her wishes. Perhaps they should have called a different maid. Bowing her head in agreement, the blonde expected the urgent completion of her task. This was extremely important. Understanding what they want from her, the girl says that everything will be done. She wants to help the owner at all costs. The door slams shut. Lena is really very kind and always takes care of Urania, understanding her situation. Even Thalia's machinations are not an obstacle in this matter. The memories were not the best. In a past life, this girl helped her even after everyone turned away from her. When the heroine was locked in the tower, no one wanted to communicate with her or even bring food. But Lena always tried to do everything in the best possible way. Melancholy almost captured the beauty at that time. Sitting exhausted, she really needed support. Thoughts were interrupted as soon as two maids appeared in the room. The promise was fulfilled, and in record time. A slight smile appears on the lady's face. Ophelia will be very useful in the plan to escape from here. Allies will not interfere, and this girl is the Baron's wife, who was deprived of her status. She was originally Euclid's personal maid, so an alliance with her is very beneficial. The maid can easily replace Thalia, and it will be quite simple to pull off. There will be no one on the way who could interfere. Remembering the letter that needed to be sent, Urania started a conversation on a completely different topic. Turning to her interlocutor, she mentions the loss of Ophelia's child. A surprised voice asks how this is known. There is no answer, since Lena told about this a long time ago in the tower after everything that happened. Taking the piece of paper from the table, the girl continues the conversation again, promising that she will help find the child. This will be the best board. Mercy is one of the most important things in this world. The Duchess continues the story because after helping, she will allow them both to live on the estate, but she needs something in return. Tears of joy freeze in green eyes. Asking again, the girl does not believe that this is possible, and then thanks. The conditions are the simplest. You need to keep an eye on Thalia, and as soon as she does something strange, report immediately. This will be the payment for all the work. The beauty is still the legal wife of Duke Euclid, and while this is still true, she intends to take full advantage of it. A carrier pigeon flies between the clouds. There is a letter tied to the paw, which is probably intended for someone specific. Sitting on the windowsill on the other side of the window, the bird lightly knocks its beak on the glass, announcing its arrival. Approaching the windowsill, the girl realizes that this day has come. The letter that destroyed her entire life has arrived, and now all she has to do is get it right. The Count mentioned why Cass ordered him to stay at the festival in the capital. The time has come, so it is worth destroying the protective artifact. Thoughts are galloping around in the young lady's head. It's better to become the Duke's shadow than to sign your own death warrant. The hand is shaking, but there is enough strength to write that the girl refuses to do this. The paper is folded again and tied with ribbon. The hands slowly rise into the air and then release the postal bird. The job was done exactly as required. The girl's face lit up at how proud she was. For the first time in 20 years, she managed to defy Count Vincent. Something from the category of fantasy. Rejoicing in her small victory, Urania decides that it is better to die in battle than to become a puppet. Nothing can be changed. The thought of a poisonous drug that is used to drink comes to mind. Thanks to the grass that was given to her, her vision and voice fully returned. You won't be able to deceive for a long time, so it's worth getting better as soon as possible, and then getting a divorce and running away to hell. The best decision. No one knows what the consequences will be if Cassius finds out about the little secret that he managed to hide all this time. His anger can be uncontrollable. The horror came from nowhere. They didn't know. The heroine didn't even want to think about something like that. It's better to forget about such things. It's a dark night, and only one bright lamp shines regularly, helping those present to finish what they started and not be in the dark. The blonde sits all alone in the room, trying to figure out the letter. A blank sheet of paper lies on the table, waiting for some action. The pen glides easily across the parchment, as if trying to make the letters more beautiful than they should be. After a second, a heavy seal is lowered, certifying the validity of the order. It's strange that everything happens exactly the way it shouldn't. The thought of Apelia comes to mind. She will definitely be able to find a good and worthy doctor who could help. Calling the maid, the Duchess continues to sit in the chair. Not even a minute passes before the woman materializes, asking what she needs. The request is quite strange, and the maid's face twists a little. She needs to send the letter in secret. The addressee is said Callisto, an unfamiliar man whom I would still like to get to know better. I wonder what this man's motive is. A middle-aged young man in strange clothes asks what is so important written on this paper. There is obvious interest in his gaze. A man with long, beautiful blue hair raises his hand with a leaf in the air. Without holding back, he chuckles with interest. The answer does not take long to arrive. Less than an hour later, the letter lies on the windowsill, saying that anyone for a lot of money. Slight anger appears on the young lady's face. She complains to herself about Saeed's character. He, as always, cannot be imitated. Someone's voice pulls her out of her thoughts, calling her mistress. Perhaps someone needed something urgently, and she needed to figure out what it was. Lena, approaching the box, says that they have good news. Miss Apelia was reunited with her child and conveyed that the request was fulfilled in the best possible way. The waist is no longer an issue, and that's for the better. In her thoughts, the girl notices that her voice is not yet very good, but her vision is completely restored, which means that soon it will be possible to raise the topic of divorce. The beautiful corridor literally absorbed the girl. In this life, Cass did not go to the capital, and perhaps it was because of the lake. But no one knew that. The maid, carefully holding the beauty's hand, led her along the corridors. This life will pass in a new way, the path it needs. Approaching the main hall, the blonde notices two people. The servants greet the mistress and then obligingly bow. The question of how she is doing makes you freeze. Strange sensations make your whole body literally soar. Confusion is reflected in a slight note on the face. There is no one behind Urania, which means they are talking to her, which can't help but put her in a stupor. It's strange what happened to them all of a sudden. Thoughts jump in different directions, while Lena gently pushes her friend. Everything that is happening quickly becomes clear. The Duke called everyone and ordered them to treat the young lady with respect. Realization comes at that very second. The maid goes off into her pink dreams, talking about how cool Cassius looked when he pulled the Duchess out of the lake. The lady refuses to shut up, continuing to talk about the moment when the man came to the castle holding his wife in his arms. Switching to something else, the girl still turns to the person standing next to her, asking if she was scared. The only answer is an awkward smile. Realizing how much she is talking, the maid abruptly falls silent and then asks for forgiveness, as if trying to make amends for something. A male voice calls out to Urania, calling her by name. Everything happens quite quickly, but the girl manages to turn around. Cassius looks menacingly at his interlocutor. He did not allow her to go out until she was completely recovered. Militantly folding his arms across his chest, the guy demands that she explain herself. It's really quite strange, but it looks like he's angry. A slight smile of humility appears on his face. Perhaps Lena just got something wrong, because the Duke she knows certainly couldn't act worried. She even managed to believe in such a miracle, but everything quickly dissipated. Fingers tightly grip a piece of paper. Shyly looking away, the beauty holds out a note. She is ashamed of her actions, but this cannot wait at least a few more days. Vincent's hand carefully takes the offered item. He can't wait to find out what's written there. Cold-bloodedness is sometimes very surprising, because not a single muscle of the face even moved. The glance runs over the clumsy handwriting. The eyes widen in surprise, making it clear at least some emotion. This is nothing more than a strange confusion. The voice seemed to almost tremble, however, pulling himself together. The guy asked again whether they really wanted to divorce him. The eyebrows frown as the young man asks questions in surprise. He wonders what happened to make her behave this way. Fright is trying to get through, but there is no way out. Therefore, bowing her head, the Duchess tries not to show that something is wrong here. Without allowing her to explain anything, even with her methods, the man turns on his heel and then asks to follow him. Joy is all. In her thoughts, the girl is already rejoicing. Perhaps Cass wants to sign the papers right away, and then it will all be over. Trying to show with gestures what they need to do, Urania says that they should follow the Duke. Slight confusion is clearly expressed on the beauty's face, but the maid does not dare to contradict. Stairs and corridors are all that can be seen at the moment. The path is not the shortest, and the estate, on the contrary, is too huge. The dark-haired young man is almost approaching the desired door. Only he alone knows why they all came here. The blonde is trying to walk as quickly as possible. She can't wait to sort this marriage out once and for all. The feet, shod in beautiful blue shoes, are literally entwined, clinging to each other. Quite comfortable shoes, but not the best combination with speed. Lena is noticeably nervous. She tries to hold the Duchess tightly to prevent her from falling, but she doesn't do a very good job, so she asks her to slow down a little. Turning her head, the brunette asks the owner to go slower, because the girl can't quite keep up with him. Patent leather shoes freeze. The man decided to listen to the advice and apparently decided to stop and wait. Anger takes over his entire body again. He is outraged that the girl, who has not fully recovered, is walking around and also offers to get a divorce. Urania really doesn't want this, but this is the only way she will have at least some chance of a full life, which she has dreamed of for so long. Grasping the hem of her dress with her hand and then squeezing it, the girl continues to remain silent. She has no other choice, even if her voice has returned. Trying to soften what is happening, the blonde smiles. You shouldn't aggravate your situation, otherwise there will definitely be no point. The pupils seem to shrink on their own. The man clearly does not know how to react to such an attitude towards himself. The smile becomes even wider. A mischievous thought pops into my head. It might be worth trying again. One of the effective methods that has already been tried. The guy's cheekbones tense. He still doesn't understand at all what is happening and what he should expect as the next step. A silent question freezes on the Duke's lips. Perhaps it was really worth asking something, but there was absolutely no time for this, so it's worth keeping your mouth shut. The girl's face turns bright red. She didn't even have time to do anything, but something had already made her embarrassed. How embarrassing. The voice addresses the interlocutor. She again tries to confuse the young man, leaving him no chance to get out. A cold gaze is focused on something superficial. The girl again does some strange things, thereby ruining everything. Shaking her head, the blonde tries to explain something. She herself is already tired of all this, but she has no other plan. If someone manages to interfere, then the whole divorce plan will go down the drain. It may all be false, but Cassius does not look happy after the news of his wife's intentions. A few seconds later, a warm male hand carefully takes Euclid's palm. All thoughts immediately evaporate somewhere without giving a single chance for rethinking. Grabbing the brush, the Duke throws it over his shoulder. He clearly has his own clear plan on how to turn everything in his favor. Surprised, Urania finds herself in the arms of the brunette. She can't help but be confused by everything that's happening, but there are only more questions. The girl doesn't want to let go of the guy's neck at all. Perhaps she is simply afraid that he will not hold her, and she will fall, or something else is involved. Cassius, without looking up, starts talking about something else. The heroine hugged him so confidently, and now she is literally shaking due to fear. The following words are addressed to none other than Lena. She is asked to leave the young people alone. The maid's eyes instantly widen, but she does not dare to contradict. Bowing her head in a gesture of submission, the brunette decides to leave. I don't want to disrupt such a moment for the couple and violate orders. The beautiful room, lit only by daylight, is beautifully furnished in Duke style. It is immediately clear who owns the estate. The heroine sits on the sofa, looking at the teapot into which tea is being poured, in order to then pour the whole thing into cups. It's strange that Cass agreed to this. Dark liquid falls into the mug as the man begins his tirade. It seems to her, or he admits his cold attitude towards her. The girl raises her head while the interlocutor approaches the sofa. He asks her to understand him, because this happens, and it's natural. The man sits down very close, continuing his simple speech. The blonde really almost always avoided him, and he couldn't do anything about it. The situation is very difficult to change, but it's still worth trying. Moving as far away as possible, the Duchess cursed the brunette and his desire to get closer. Unexpected words poured out of his mouth. The interviewee had changed a lot lately, but was that really all she needed? Hands do not even dare to touch the mug, filled to the brim and remain limply lying on the sides. I can't believe that everything he says is true. Asking again if she really needs a divorce, the young man takes the girl by the hand. The sensations are one of the most unpleasant and at the same time exciting. As if remembering something, the man says that after mentioning the divorce, the girl literally became fearless. Behavior worsened. It seemed that Cassius was a big tiger, and Urania was a small, defenseless rabbit. It was necessary to remain calm, but it was quite difficult to pull it off. It seems that the statement of his desire greatly hurt the guy. The girl did not expect such a turn at all, but she should not have expected anything supernatural. Sharply spitting out the contents of the cup, the heroine recoiled from the table. My tongue was burning very hot. The tea turned out to be too hot, and she clearly did not calculate it. Putting her hand to her mouth, as if trying to smooth out all the pain, the beauty does not show it. I really want to scream, but there is no way out. She pretends to be dumb. Out of nowhere, the Duke appears in his hands with a napkin, which he intends to apply to the girl's cheek or mouth. Is this a concern? Carefully continuing his actions, the brunette asks if the interlocutor was burned. He needs to know what happened and how to help her. Gently running a cloth over his chin, he still carefully looks at the burn site. The eyes widened, and the main character just continued to stare. The focused gaze of intelligent eyes tries to drill a hole, even if all attempts remain only temporary. The hands seem to stretch forward on their own, and then push the young man quite hard into the chest. In trying to push away, nothing matters anymore. Surprise and even some disappointment prevail. I don't want to believe what's really happening, but the guy clearly didn't expect such a turn of events. Putting her finger to her lips, the heroine wonders how this just happened. She didn't even want to push it. It just happened somehow. My tongue is pulled out of my thoughts, still burning mercilessly. Urania really got burned, and there was no point in denying it. The Duke suddenly decides to state the facts out loud. The beauty does not like to complain. She constantly asks to hug her, and after all this, she also jumps into the lake. It's difficult to understand the motives. His hand buries itself in his hair. It is almost impossible to understand the girl, but strangely enough, it is still possible. The chosen ones could do this even without great difficulty. I don't want to admit my mistakes or give reasons for my actions, especially since this is much more difficult to do when you are mute. The blonde doesn't even dare to mention anything. The hand reaches out to the handle of some incomprehensible box. The man clearly has his own plan, so he urgently needed something in the table. A beautiful blue velvet box falls into the girl's palms. It turns out that this is a family treasure of the Euclid family. It would seem like such a calm shell, but inside the heroine, everything was raging. She hoped for a divorce, and therefore was indignant at the guy's strange behavior. The blonde clearly wants to say something, perhaps to express your deep dissatisfaction, or perhaps something else is involved. An aggressive facial expression makes itself felt. She needs to win the Duke's hand, and thereby explain to him some important things that are worth knowing. Things are not always as simple as they seem. Instead of following the request, the young man just turns sharply and leaves, heading in a completely different direction. It is not clear what caused this behavior. Shock shows on the confused face. How dare he do something like this right in front of the lady's nose? It is unacceptable. Already at the door, the brunette turns, asking the lady to take the duty of the Duchess responsibly. The reward will be that Euclid will also live up to her expectations. The door closed with a slam, and then a deep exhalation was heard from the blonde. Everything will clearly not be as simple as she would like. Attention is again drawn to a small box lying peacefully on an oak table very close to the sofa. Hands naturally reach for the little thing. It already seems that the body is not under the heroine's control, but this is not the case, because she can still think about how she shouldn't do this. The eyes widen more, becoming like apples. I can't believe that what the girl now has in her hands is so valuable. This beautiful necklace is the symbol of the duchy. The colors go well together, making it clear how rich and luxurious everything is. Awareness comes at that very second, dissipating all the joy from the thing received. If Cassius gives such a thing, it means that you can completely forget about divorce. In modern times, divorces and short marriages are not uncommon. You can get something useful from this information. The man definitely doesn't care about his reputation, which means the reason lies in something else. The girl couldn't believe it at all. But does Euclid still blame himself for the fact that the girl lost her sight and head when she was saving his mother? Many unrevealed secrets remain sealed for centuries. The gaze switches again to the velvet box. It is not clear what needs to be done about this. She has no intention of wearing the necklace, but the Duke has given different orders. A mischievous thought pops up somewhere in the back of my mind. By selling this thing, you can earn so much money that you will never have to work again, which couldn't help but rejoice. The opinion changed very quickly. Lowering the pendant back to its rightful place, the girl only thinks that she cannot do this. Pushing the belongings away from her, she silently reflects. Life is still much more valuable to her than some kind of sale. In order for everything to work, Cass's guilt must first be calmed. After everything that happened, this could be good. Not much time passed, but the morning came quite imperceptibly. A woman's voice tries to call the Duke, but to no avail. One of the maids tries to clarify the situation. No one has seen the owner since yesterday. Even the people who are always around him say they have no idea what happened. Like a sad dog, Urania, looking down, is about to leave. Lena quickly realizes that this cannot be so she changes her train of thought. The advisor must know where Cassius is now. The girl perked up, because now she just needs to find him. An hour later, all attempts were failed. Burying her face in her hands, the heroine lamented because she couldn't even find the servant she needed. If young people do not meet, they will not be able to talk. The man simply disappeared, but sitting with arms folded is also not a good option. The young herb helped restore my vision and almost all of my voice, so it was time to act. Guile appears out of nowhere, asking if his name was. This was indeed true, because Urania had been looking for him for a long time. With her hands folded on her knees, the girl looks into the distance. She knows exactly what she has to do to get the job done successfully. The fingers take the note, and then, as if weightlessly, they move it across the table towards the servant. She needs to be heard. The order was for the guy to prepare for departure. It's better to do this today. Otherwise, you may miss an important event. Determination fills the mind. Vincent is not there, which means the lady will have to go in search of a cure alone. It's worth it and will definitely bear fruit in the future. Smiling helpfully, the young man accepts the note and then says that immediately after he notifies the owner, they should move out. Trying to react as restrainedly as possible, the girl understands that everything can be destroyed. Cassius must never know about this. Otherwise, something will go wrong. The blonde looks menacingly at Guile and then points her finger at a piece of paper. He must turn the note over. The text said that the mistress knows what the servant does in the morning. The man's eyes slowly widen, realizing the complexity of the situation. Embarrassment takes over the young man's cheeks with a bright scarlet color. He tries to say something, objecting, but there is no point in continuing to build a performance. Covering his face, he asks how she knows about this information. I absolutely can't believe that all this is real. The shame makes me want to literally sink into the ground. This secret was not complicated and was known to a fairly wide circle of people. Every morning, Guile sits down to write erotic stories. The guy's favorite genre is man's love. Not the best choice if you're doing something in secret. There's always a chance that someone will find out, and that's exactly what happened now. The girl didn't want to admit it, but she herself only recently found out about it. A messenger pigeon quite accidentally flew into the window of the chambers, causing surprise. This duchy is quite progressive, so no one has the right to judge anyone's hobbies. However, servants are prohibited from doing anything other than serving. Smiling, the girl asks them to do each other a favor and keep quiet about this little incident. Now it will be quite simple, because you can control Guile. Trying not to cry out of shame and hide his nervousness, the servant bows, saying that he will begin preparations right away. A beautiful gilded carriage rushes through the streets like a whirlwind. People in it are in a hurry to get somewhere, and this can be understood by the speed. Already on the street, the blonde, beautifully dressed in a cute suit, heads towards the neighboring street. The man behind her obligingly follows her. The alley looks abandoned due to the dilapidation of the houses. The guy says that they have arrived, while the lady herself is trying to figure out where they are. Two young men are standing near the entrance to some barracks, completely out of place with the local interior. Everything around looks more than strange. The blonde says that they weren't staying there. He is absolutely calm, because they still have quite a bit to go, and they will find themselves in the house they need. Without even trying to use gestures to say or write anything, the girl silently raises her hand, stopping the flow of words. The only thing that can be understood from the gestures is that she wants to say no. Why not? If the best way was to move on, the one they were looking for is already here. A young man with long bluish hair waves his hand in a friendly manner, as if inviting you to go inside. This man is Callisto Saad, the head of the mercenaries. Putting his hand to his chin, he seems mockingly surprised that Duchess Euclid herself appears here. The girl is a little sad. This man is an old childhood friend, but he died even before her. This cannot but bother you, even if it happened in a past life. After the destruction of the artifact, monsters climbed through the gap, and therefore the Empire wanted to use mercenaries. This seemed like the best solution at that time. The guild raised prices exorbitantly to get even more money, and some say Callisto was responsible for this decision. Cassius killed him. Coming closer, the guy, like an older brother, puts his hand to the heroine's forehead, jokingly remembering the promise. She is not his wife, as she promised in childhood, but someone else's. Patience is like an overflowing cup bursting at the seams. A girl with a murderous gaze looks up menacingly. Her desire is very simple, because she needs someone to move away from her. Angry at the man, the young lady waves her arms, trying to remain as calm as possible. Laughter flows throughout the room. Getting ready for work, Callisto calms down and asks if anything strange has happened lately that could be a mistake. The lady's eyebrows rise in surprise. She tries to express her thoughts in this way because it is difficult to understand what should have happened. Slowly leaning towards her interlocutor's ear, Ced reminds her of her father, who is another example. The Count constantly strives to ruin everyone's life. The girl hits the boy in the chest with her small fist. This is all, of course, in jest, but anger already seems to be an irreplaceable thing. No longer trying to encrypt herself using notes, the lady asks to tell her in more detail, because it is really important for her to know what insidious plans her relative has. Raising his head and joking again, the man smiles, talking about how he missed his friend's nasal voice. Tears of happiness are very difficult to hold back. Leaning closer to the mistress's face, the guy tries to continue his sarcastic speech, while Guile does his best to remain calm. A tired look makes it clear how difficult it is. He asks if the friends would like to choose another place for all this fun, even if there is no answer. The girl angrily grabs Ced by the hair, trying to teach him reason. A childhood friend tries to resist Rennie's pressure, begging him to let go. The reserves of sarcasm have clearly dried up, and so the boy asks that it all end. And in return, of course, he will tell everything. It is not at all difficult for him to do such a favor. Pulling her palms out of the man's hair, the girl is glad that this will finally happen. Less than 100 years have passed since this happened. It's quite tiring, isn't it? Someone's rude voice, as if taking him out of reality, says that Urania treated her friend too softly, even if it was not true, and everything happened as a joke. A black-gloved hand grabs the back of Sade's head. Anger seeps in, trying to fill everything around, as if not paying attention to anything. The Duke, as if nothing had happened, stands, continuing to hold the man. He does not intend to do anything, however, most likely. He expects to hear something, like an explanation. Horror is displayed on the heroine's face. She did not expect to see Cassius here, especially since she was confident about the secrecy of her operation. Something went completely wrong. Turning his head, Callisto, as if afraid of nothing, smiles his most disgusting smile. Realizing that Euclid himself is standing in front of him, he still continues to make fun of him. Frowning his eyebrows, the guy asks what business the mercenary captain is discussing with his duchess. Perhaps he is really interested, or perhaps there is some other hidden reason. Putting her hands to her face, the blonde only now realizes what is planned here. There is an urgent need to somehow correct the current situation. With slow steps, the girl approaches her husband. She probably already knows how to try to make amends for everything that happened. You can't hesitate for even a second. Like a kitten, she looks into his eyes, trying to get the Duke to let the man go. He's probably in pain, and it won't end well. The outcome is enormously important. Confusion freezes on Cass's face. He did not think that his wife would defend some incomprehensible person with whom he was clearly not on good terms. The guy clearly didn't want to understand the situation. Turning his head to the side, the man continues to silently look to the side. He can't believe that the whole situation will end so easily. Suddenly, the Duchess realizes what is happening. It is not clear how he got here, because it is almost impossible to even intentionally get into this part of the guild. Someone clearly had a hand. I can't believe it, but was Guile really the one who handed over her plans to the owner? He looks quite strange, but at the same time terribly calm. It was definitely a servant. Realizing that the girl can't say anything, she just silently glares at the butler. She wants to literally hit him, but this is impossible in the presence of others. Cass's eyes seemed to shrink even further. He thinks about what to do, and whether he should really try to let go and forget about Saida. By lowering his hand, the man still gives Callisto the opportunity to free himself from the iron grip. The wife's persuasion clearly worked. The guy's head drops down a little, as does his body, as a sharp kick literally sends him flying. Not the best landing. Sarcasm is back to normal. Ced playfully complains about the pain. The next words are that he needs compensation for the damage caused. The icy gaze quickly made the interlocutor regret his words. Throwing up his hands, the young man only waves it off, saying that he is joking. It is an honor for the young man to speak with the Duke. The first words out of his mouth indicate that he and Rennie are childhood friends. This is completely optional information. Squinting, Urania cannot understand why he needs to be silly again. How can he talk so frivolously to the demon of war? Overall, the guy has always been like this. Extend your hand to him. He will bite it off at the elbow. He doesn't care how rich or powerful a person is, because he always behaves the same. Clinging to the Duke's elbow, the heroine realizes that now is the time to leave. The young man will soon explode out of anger, and then everything may end badly. Cass turns his attention to his wife. He doesn't need words to understand what is required of him. Perhaps the best solution would be to simply obey and leave, a nervous smile, as if assuring that everything is fine and they should not be left alone with Saeed. Nobody knows what might come into his head. Cassius seemed to ignore everything. He thought about something, and after that, as if being in nirvana, he asked again if they were really friends. According to Callisto, he was simply too happy to see them, so he went overboard. They are truly old comrades. Anger again takes over the Duke's emotions. Frowning, he asks to call the girl Duchess, not Rennie. She has a name, but not this terrible abbreviation. The interlocutor asks for forgiveness, but it is clear to everyone present that this is all false. There is nothing you can do about it, because they are such old acquaintances that you want to use nicknames. The humor was not appreciated. Euclid is ready to incinerate the dark-haired young man without even thinking for a second. Urania is already quite tired of this, despite the fact that they are both dear to her. If Cass is not going to leave just like that, then action will have to be taken. It's pretty scary that this could happen if he's not taken away from here right now. Anger takes over Urina's mind again. After all, she doesn't want to do anything, but she has no choice. If the man didn't stop now, she would have to persuade him. Said, as if nothing had happened, continues the fun, waving his arms for fun. It's not obvious, but everything that happens gives him great pleasure. Raising her fingers in the air, the heroine decides to send him to hell. Gestures indicate that he should leave here while he is allowed, otherwise everything will only get worse. Callisto doesn't really want to take risks, since the beauty was still a thorn in her childhood. She always tried to do some mischief, and it was her friend who got all the goodies. Putting his hand to his face, as if saluting as a sign of his departure, the young man talks about some unfinished business that cannot wait. This means that the persuasion worked. The young couple remains in absolute silence. The girl's face expresses the greatest relief, while the young man has not yet completely calmed down. Without thinking twice, the Duke turns towards his interlocutor and then offers to leave here. There is nothing to catch here anymore, which means there is no point in staying. Smiling sweetly, the girl just silently continues to look at her husband. She has nothing to say, even with the help of gestures, and she doesn't want to spoil such a moment with anything. The man doesn't understand what's happening. Changing the topic of conversation, he asks why she is so happy. At first glance, it might seem that she is glad that Cass found her. The best solution would be to show kindness and care towards your husband all the time. The heroine decided a long time ago that this would help, and so she carefully takes the palm again. Looking down somewhere, the girl begins to draw letters, trying to ask something. She is very interested in how he found her here. Wrinkling his face sharply, Euclid says that he needs to know everything that his wife does. It's not his own wish, but if Urania continues to hide things, he won't be able to stay by her side. A powerful wave of awareness knocks you off your feet. She herself offered the man a divorce, and now he wants to help her and stay on her side. Isn't this strange? Nevertheless, the guy remains in place, rooted to the spot, not allowing himself to move even a centimeter. He really wonders what the Duchess's next words will be. Continuing to run her finger over her palm, the girl asks if she can sometimes go for walks. Perhaps this is an important thing, or perhaps it is something secondary. Bowing his head, the young man seems to hesitate and cannot make an exact decision. This cannot be untrue, because the answer is already written on his forehead. Opening her mouth in surprise, the beauty tries to understand whether she is dreaming about everything that is happening. Her eyes widen, but it's worth it because she's allowed to go for walks. Without saying another word, Cassius just continues to look at his interlocutor, as if looking into her soul. He understands her hidden joy, but he can't do anything. The blonde realizes that she is not behaving very appropriately. She's embarrassed to talk to him, but it doesn't have to be that way. There is still a way to fix this somewhere. The girl's hand was about to slip out, but the tenacious grip prevented her from doing so. I can't believe that a man enjoys standing next to her. The main character's face turns red. It is difficult for her to understand the motives, but one cannot deny how pleasant this activity is. Proudly looking into the distance, the Duke stands without letting go of his wife, realizing that they should move forward. His face does not express any of the raging emotions inside his body. The beautiful chariot is again rushing through the streets at a frantic pace. No one is in a hurry, but I want to leave this part of the guild as quickly as possible. Fingers in gloves gently touch the neck and then fasten the clasp of the pendant. It is immediately clear that the gift must be in its rightful place. While straightening her hair, the beauty tries to adjust the necklace as fashionably, as carefully as possible, without touching anything. The Duke rejoices at his job well done. The girl's eyes drop to the pendant. She still can't believe that she managed to agree to this without even resisting. In the palm of your hand lies a beautiful silver whistle. Nothing special, but at the same time done quite well and solidly. She wonders what this generosity is all about. This is the second decoration I've made recently. There's something important hidden here, and we have to find out. Memories are carried back to a few days ago when the blonde was sitting on the bed and still looking at the pendant. Strange coincidence. Carefully bringing the whistle to her face, she wondered what could be done with it, or how to test it. The test should pass perfectly. Putting the thing to her lips, the heroine understood that she would definitely have enough strength to accomplish her plan. You just have to take in more air, and then you can whistle. The carriage with the coachman is still on the road. Having slowed down, the speed was almost minimal, realizing that there was nowhere else to rush because the couple had left the city. The hand grabs the edge of the sleeve of a beautiful robe with an ornament. This gesture is ambiguous, but it is immediately clear what the hostess wants. Continuing to persistently pull, the girl seems to be trying to convey her desires. Both people in the carriage do not express any visible emotions, only complete indifference. The Duke finally understands what they want from him. It wasn't difficult, but it took time. Asking again, he clarifies whether the girl really wants the boy to take off his jacket. The blonde tries to mumble something without gestures, but since everyone knows that the voice never returned, only indistinct sounds come out. This is to be expected. The man seems shocked to the core. He does not expect anything from this meeting, but also something interesting has already happened in advance and is still ongoing. The girl simply continues to mindlessly stare at her interlocutor, realizing that she has exhausted her reserve of courage, and now she should only wait for the next step. It's quite simple. Accepting the challenge, the husband lowers his jacket from his shoulders, despite the fact that he is in pain, and at the same time talks about some incomprehensible things. He would like them to always have this opportunity to communicate well. The arms of the shirt are slightly raised, exposing the elbow and showing the wound on the arm. The interlocutor's eyes widen and understanding strikes in a split second. Taking out a snow-white treated rag, she gently begins to apply it to the place of pain. It is important for her that Cass feel better and that he can finally feel better. Misunderstanding is reflected in rough facial features. The next question remains hanging in the air because the young man wonders how the blonde found out about this. It's hard for the girl to say anything. Sadness is displayed, taking over everything around, even if this is not at all necessary. This is what is happening now, because the heroine is preparing for a speech. After restoring her vision, Urania began to see magical shadows around people. This is a rather strange phenomenon, and even, no matter how much she wants it, she cannot change anything. Each person and each shadow has a special shape and size. No one has ever seen a similar figure, and all this will remain a rather individual thing. The girl still has no idea what it is, but in the Mercenaries Guild she noticed a shadow near Cass's hand. It was as strange as possible, but she managed to understand what it was. Another factor was the smell of blood. The beauty felt it as soon as the guy decided to get closer than 1 meter. There were no more secrets. I didn't want to believe it, but this is something special that Syed was talking about. This rogue should never be trusted, but this time everything worked against the main character. Trying to quickly change the topic of conversation, the young man asks, "Why did the interlocutor come here?" There were no problems with being in the castle, but something brought her here. Cass again holds out his hand for his wife to write her answer on it. Gestures are no longer used, so this became clear. A slight grin appears on the young lady's face. The man is already so used to it that he extends his palm without even asking what she wants. This couldn't help but please me, at least a little. Applying an elegant finger, the lady tries to explain the situation. I have to lie, but there is clearly no way out. According to her, this is an important childhood friend, and they haven't seen each other for a long time. That's all. Bowing, the Duke asks him not to attract so much attention to himself next time. Such incomprehensible trips always lead to a huge amount of gossip. Mild surprise seems like a completely ordinary thing. Now I have to feel this way almost all the time. I can't believe Cassius would say something like that. In her heart, the lady was clearly and very angry. She didn't understand why such an attitude was directed towards her and not towards someone else. I didn't want this to happen. Trying to come to terms with her fate, the main character looks at the floor. Thoughts suffer greatly because the Duke himself constantly gets into some kind of trouble, and he himself decided to read morals. This young man is known for rumors related to women. She managed to find out this a few months ago, and it was not easy to accept. But nothing could be changed. As soon as a man appears at any event, gossip of all sorts begins to creep in. Girls crowd around, trying to attract a person's attention, even if sometimes it is to no avail. Sadness covers the inside of the heroine. In the end, this is all happening because of her. This is all because his wife is not worthy of such a husband, because he is simply wonderful. Completely unexpected, even for himself, the man asks not to even think about bad things. He doesn't like the thought of it, and that's why it's like this. You should listen to him. The Duchess silently looks somewhere to the side. She has absolutely nothing to answer or put forward as her protest to what has just been said. Thinking that the origin of the thing should be explained, the guy carefully brings the whistle to the lady's lips. All she has to do is blow into it to call someone for help. The little thing ends up in the heroine's mouth. The briefing was carried out quite simply and in clear words, but this did not allow the embarrassment to evaporate. Her eyes widen in surprise, because the girl clearly did not expect such a good attitude towards herself. This was new. The young man seemed completely unaware of his interlocutor's behavior. Her reaction is not particularly important to him because the result or outcome is much more important. Continuing his explanations, he says that you just need to blow, but hold it with your hand. Urania's cheeks turn scarlet as the girl literally jumps away from the guy. The wheels no longer click on the tiles because the carriage has entered an area with a softer, earthier surface. There is no longer such strong irritation due to sounds. Attention was diverted, but literally a second later the lady sitting next to him again reaches out to the man. She needs to tell him something, and this is an extremely important thing. By placing her finger on the back of her gloved hand, the beauty draws some symbols, thereby saying, "Thank you." She is truly immensely grateful, because the thing will certainly protect her. The carriage continues on its way. They should hurry up to arrive at the castle on time, without any delays. The blonde is clearly tired. Everything that happened, as well as the sudden appearance of her husband, tired her quite a lot. I didn't want to admit it, but sometimes a vacation on an estate isn't such a bad thing. The head smoothly rests on the guy's shoulder. She shouldn't say anything, just like Euclid next to her, because both of them don't care at all. The Duke very quietly says that for the sake of the girl, he can do anything. Sitting in the hall on a comfortable chair, the blonde was waiting for a notification, and she managed to wait. After some time, Lena appeared in the room saying that Ophelia had already arrived. An uncontrollable smile appears on the beauty's face. It looks like the maid managed to do her job just fine. I can't believe it all happened so quickly. Turning to the servant, Urania asks if she found out everything about Thalia. It is important to understand who controlled the woman and why. The next morning, the hated person lectures again. She is indignant, saying that she can hardly even walk, but she still went somewhere. Contempt is clearly visible on the maid's face as she continues to blame the blonde. According to her, the Duchess is making life difficult for everyone and therefore will now go for a walk once every 2 weeks. Not daring to say a word, Rennie just frowns, realizing how tired she is of all this. Perhaps the best way would be to get rid of the interlocutor, but so far this is difficult to pull off. The hand carefully takes out the note and then places it on the table. Moving a piece of paper in the other direction, she will suffer so that her question will be answered. The note provided some interesting context. Euclid was interested to know where her money went and how the servants managed it. Everything must be verified. Trying to avoid a direct answer, Thalia nervously looks away and then tries to justify herself. This is her job, and she can handle everything herself. The main character's patience is running out. The next thing she asks is to show the accounts so that she can understand the exact accounting of the papers. A surprised look literally drills into the interlocutor. There were no thoughts left in my head because the hostess voiced her request not through paper, but using her own words. Not intending to bow down to anyone, the girl again asks, but more firmly, to show her the accounts of expenses and savings that she has accumulated over all this time. Turning just half a turn, realizing that Thalia doesn't deserve anything more, the blonde throws a final warning, menacingly glaring at the woman with a cold gaze. The maid's surprise knew no bounds. Almost stuttering, she mentions the mistress's voice. She can't believe that now she can talk, and for no apparent reason she decided to get even. The girl did not want to talk to the servants at all, however. As if mocking, she looks indignantly at the maid. Now she has to humiliate herself, and Urania has become the mistress. Straightening her hair with a slight movement of her hand, the girl tries to ensure that everything lies as it should. The voice has returned, but not completely, so the preference is given in the other direction, and she remains silent all the time. The maid seemed to be beginning to stutter. The person asks how Euclid cannot tell the master about this. However, remaining absolutely not embarrassed, the blonde assures that she can do anything. Perhaps this is just a temporary phenomenon, and upsetting Cassius is not worth it at all. If the voice disappears, he won't be happy. Trying to continue to fight for justice, Thalia says that it is a duty and cannot be avoided, but she is unceremoniously interrupted. Paying no attention, the Duchess remains taciturn. It is this girl who decides who is obliged to do what. There is no choice, and orders must be obeyed. Hostility and the desire to do something bad or even worse than it is now take possession of a woman. It may not be the best idea, but continuing to remain silent will definitely help. She didn't seem to like Urina's answer very much. This is obvious because the person is not yet particularly used to talking like that, and not everything turns out flawlessly. Obvious things, however. A not very pleasant thought comes to mind again. His vision also did not completely return, and even if this fact had crossed the young mind more than once, it did not make him any better. The girl asks again to bring the bills. Thalia, clasping her hands, clearly trying to get out of the situation, begins to mumble something. In her course of events, she lost the papers on which the expenses were written. Putting her hand to her cheek and squinting her eyes, the blonde understands that her interlocutor has decided to admit her guilt. This was not part of the plan, but it's also not the worst outcome. Not even a second passes before the girl falls to her knees, putting her head to the floor. Now it's time for Charity to appear on the opposite person's face, and this is not the worst option. Without getting up from the floor, the maid tearfully asks for forgiveness, because it turns out she has wasted all the money. There is absolutely no regret in the voice. Surprised, Urania looks somewhere to the side, noting that it's not even winter yet, but the money has already run out. I wonder what needs to be done to make this happen. Continuing her excuses, the brunette suddenly remembers the health of the hostess. This is a great excuse, so the person talks about buying the most expensive plants, whose aromas are beneficial to health. She couldn't plant all this for a girl who couldn't even see anything. Apparently, she simply stole the money and split it with someone. It is simply inconceivable how it is even possible to waste the annual budget of the largest duchy in the empire. It's easier just not to think about it. So the blonde simply gets up from her knees. Not believing her ears, the maid asks if she will really be forgiven. The eyes widen on their own, not believing such a miracle. Thalia is a servant, absolutely loyal to the duchy. Even despite all the intrigues that she has created, the girl is still one of the best. A woman hates her housewife for only one reason, which is not so complicated. In her eyes, she is a disgrace to the Duke, and that says it all. It is unlikely that she stole this money for herself. We need to find out who her ally is, because this will help settle the matter much faster. A thoughtful expression makes it clear that the blonde has long been lost in her thoughts. Whether this has anything to do with Opilia's report, that is the question. The brunette recently spoke about one interesting detail. The woman was dating one man, and it was Gerard, the guardian of the Euclid. After the information was conveyed, Lena helpfully told even more interesting details. The guy was a known pervert and had a bunch of maids fall in love with him. It was a secret. I didn't want to believe it. But did Gerard really seduce Thalia, thereby forcing her to work for himself and help with the theft of money? Or perhaps the maid herself deceived him meanly. A man's voice snaps me out of my thoughts. They are clearly turning to her because someone is very interested in what they are doing here and why all this is happening. Now there are no longer 2 people in the room, but 4. The Duke arrived quite recently, and behind him stands Lena, who with all her appearance tried to warn about what had happened. Scarlet eyes widen sharply, while the heroine herself does not understand where Cassius came from and how he managed to find out about everything. I didn't want to turn away, but obviously it was the best decision, so I had to do it. It wasn't a good idea to make eye contact right now. Sometimes it seems that the guy sees his wife, and therefore in this way he constantly finds her somewhere else. It's so easy that it even becomes scary. Without taking his eyes off the Duchess, the young man states the facts. She looks at him and then, as if in fear, quickly turns away, trying to avoid contact. Repeating his question, the young man clarifies whether this is true or whether it just seems to him. The best solution would have been to say something else, but there was no time to think about it. Smiling nervously, Urania tries to react to the situation as calmly as possible. This is the most important thing now. Cass continues to silently stare into the room with her eyes. He asks something, but completely forgets to ask about what is happening here. Apologizing for everything, Thalia mutters something, asking not to blame the mistress for the fact that the brunette is now in such a strange position. Without showing her insidious smile, the girl tries to save face and pretend to be a victim. One of the most successful roles of my entire life. The young man's voice becomes even more angry when he says that, in my opinion, the interlocutor did not understand anything. The maid, in turn, gets up, asking what happened. Tilting his head to the side, the Duke says that Urania has not done anything wrong, and no one has the right to blame her. This is clearly communicated and understandable in simple language. Looking towards the floor with contempt, the guy grins, not intending to disturb this couple. Thalia should have received what she deserved for all her deeds long ago. Not daring to say another word, the man promises to return later and then leaves the room. He also has his own important things to do. Urania stares off somewhere, realizing that her husband has just defended his honor without saying more than a few sentences. This is truly amazing. It's dark night outside. The stars shine provocatively, helping the moon to illuminate the yard at least a little. I didn't want to admit it, but as soon as my vision returned, the girl began to look only at Cassius. Sometimes it is absolutely impossible to take your eyes off, because the guy is extraordinarily handsome, and with his actions he makes you stare even more. It's definitely not worth continuing to do this. If he doesn't realize it now, it could happen pretty soon, and it won't end well. If something goes wrong, Euclid might even kill the young lady. Not that it would happen for sure, but she would disgrace his entire family, and it would be a well-deserved move. Cold sweat is just a nightmare. It always evokes fear, and then these unpleasant sensations seem unreal. It's better not to think about it. I made only one decision for myself. If the Duchess fails to get a divorce, then it will be necessary to immediately tell that the girl is recovering. There will be no point in hiding anymore. Some sound outside the window really attracts attention. It's a little scary because night has long fallen, but at the same time, I wonder what's going on. Getting out of bed, the heroine steps softly on the tiles and moves in small steps towards the window. She needs to find out what the problem is. Realization comes quite quickly. On the other side of the window, a messenger bird hits the glass. No longer surprised by anything, the beauty extends her index finger, allowing the little bird to land on it. There is something tied to the paw, and it is a letter from Saeed. Untying the note, the girl takes the piece of paper in her hands, once again noting that the author was none other than her old childhood friend. The stamp was definitely his. Deciding not to hesitate for long, the blonde unrolls the paper and then straightens it, placing it on the table. She should read the contents more carefully so as not to miss anything. The letter said that if the heroine wanted to learn about her magic, she should return. Callisto's services, of course, will cost her dearly, but nothing can be done about it. The bundle ignited with a blue light. Not even a minute passes before the message simply disappears. It's quite strange, but at the same time, the person who sent the paper was sad, so the questions were brushed aside. There was no way out, and the girl had to get ready and go. Even if she wants to leave magic, she still needs to meet, because there are other very important things. The gaze switches to the palm. Thanks to the white grass, my voice and vision improved, but the pain in my body and neck did not disappear. In my past life, everything did not end very well. At first, it started typically with pain all over the body, then the nose began to bleed, and then everything led to a quiet death. The consequences of the poison are quite dangerous. Determination no longer knew boundaries. Callisto was needed as soon as possible, otherwise it would not be possible to find a decent doctor on time. Usually lunchtime is the time for the servants to rest. The Duchess is not embarrassed at all, which is why she is in a beautiful yellow dress, walking along the corridors. Finding herself in front of a beautiful door, the girl tries to understand whether this is the right entrance or not. It seems that this is still Giles' office. The hand reaches for the door handle and then tries to pull it silently. I don't want to make unnecessary sounds. Disappointment is immediately displayed on the heroine's face. The room turns out to be locked, which means the owner has gone somewhere. There is no time to wait, and there is no longer any surprise. So the blonde worried about everything in advance. Hands reached out to his hair, trying to find the right thing. The fingers take out nothing more than a hairpin. This little thing will help you open the door and get inside. And even if you don't want to do this, it's still a last resort. Digging through the castle, the young lady thinks about how grateful she is to Ced for teaching her how to open rooms without the help of keys. A joyful smile spreads across the beauty's face. I can't believe it, but she definitely managed to pull off what she had in mind from the very beginning. A gray-haired young man approaches the room. He clearly does not expect any trick and simply returns from his walk as usual. Surprise is reflected in the soft features, because when he pulled the handle, the man found that the door was open, even if it had been locked before leaving. Turning to the exit, the lady sees her humble servant in front of her. She wondered if he would be surprised by what he discovered. Shock quickly shows on the butler's face. It seems that he will soon scream from everything that is happening. It is not clear to him what the lady forgot here. It is obvious that something has happened. So, looking down, Guile asks what the reason is. It was necessary to immediately call him, but this was not done in full. Continuing to smile silently, the girl does not show it at all. Thoughts are racing wildly in my head, and one of them is about a man. How is he not ashamed that he gave away the whole plan to Cassius? Not understanding what they are talking about, because not even a single word came out of his mouth, the servant just looks at Euclid, waiting for the verdict. Coming closer, the young man waits to be told everything. The blonde takes her hand to announce her first question. A moment later, there's a small piece of paper on the table. It is important for the heroine to find out whether any new flowers have been planted in the garden. Something had to change. Not knowing what to say, Guile just raises his eyebrow, clarifying the request. He's not sure about this, especially since there are only guards there, and they don't often let anyone in. Without showing it, the girl continues to look at something, as if she has normal vision. Immediately, not for a minute, the servant again asks what happened. Thinking about her next question, the Duchess says that she is terribly interested in where the duchy's money is spent. They cannot disappear completely without a trace. The man, not paying attention, promises to bring the ledger. After a moment, the realization of what is happening comes. This time the blonde did not use paper, but said something in her own words. Trying not to react in any way, Urania, pretending that she does not understand anything, says that she completely forgot to say that her vision had returned. Isn't this wonderful? From the outside, the castle looks as if nothing had happened. Not a single soul knows what is happening inside. Putting his fist to his mouth, the man coughs a little, trying to break the silence. He asks for forgiveness because the hostess surprised him a little. Pretending that she doesn't know anything, Rennie bats her eyes, saying that she herself is very surprised. The butler in turn bows, noticing this miracle. The best thing to do now is to change the subject and get back to what they were talking about. Slowly exhaling air, the girl prepares for her speech. Thalia was supposed to keep records, however, according to her. Now this paper is not in the duchy. The man just shakes his head in surprise, refusing to believe this, since the woman said that the Duchess entrusted her with financial management. Trying not to show it, the heroine suddenly decides to tease Guile. She says that this is the first time they are just talking to each other like this. A sweet fake smile appears again on the beauty's face. The blonde asks whether she should again rely on the servant to report everything to the Duke or not. Stuttering a little, the butler tries to speak, but it comes out rather poorly. I don't want to go overboard, but I also don't want to admit my guilt. Grabbing the first book she comes across with a blue cover, the beauty looks at the surface with interest. The man looked like he was about to explode out of embarrassment. Looking closely at the title, the girl pretends to be extremely surprised, because it says something about gays. Pretense is sure to take over the world. Not even a second passes before Guile hastily snatches the book from the Duchess's hands, bowing and promising that he is now entirely in her power. The manipulation was quite easy. Milady's only desire was to meet with Callisto, but without reporting to the Duke. She needed privacy. Almost crying with shame, the guy bows his head, trying not to complain about everything, including his ill-fated hobby. The butler quickly agrees. It was impossible to say that the girl did not like such attention, even if she herself forced him to behave this way. But still, that's quite nice of him. The bathtub is literally filled with slop. Dirty water gurgles, causing great irritation and disgust. Pretending that this is just a joy for her, Thalia notifies that the water is ready and you can go take a bath. She doesn't care about cleanliness at all. The Duchess stands with her hands folded neatly across her chest. She doesn't want to say anything, but taking a shower in such conditions is not one of the best things to do, and that's a fact. Looking away, she thinks how she hasn't gotten tired of pouring poison and dirt every time instead of normal water. This can't help but be strange. Deciding to stand up for herself, the young lady turns around, heading for the exit. The only words say that the girl was going to take a bath in the lower room. Poking out from behind the screen, the maid tries to take at least some measures to stop her, saying that everything is ready and waiting for the mistress. Trying not to be rude, even if she really wants to, the lady comments on her refusal. She just doesn't like it here, and that's the reason for going down to another room. Thalia looks like she's about to burst into anger. She can't believe this girl fought back after everything that happened before. This is not what she expected. The beautiful hall is decorated with gilding. Dark colors and gold really go very well together, and this cannot be denied. The water in the bath is quite clean and transparent, and so much so that there is no need to think about dirt. With her hands folded straight in front of her, the blonde enjoys the pleasant sensations with her head down. She hasn't felt so good in the water for a very long time, because before it was more like a mockery. The heroine wants to move to the other side, but some strange sounds from the entrance bother her a little. The maid, throwing the doors wide open, commands, asking to bring some furniture directly into the room. She dared to behave this way, even if it was not specified in the rules of etiquette. Confusion quickly showed on young Euralia's face. You cannot bring anything into the bathroom while someone is there. She becomes really uneasy. Out of nowhere, a man's voice is heard, which means it's some kind of servant. The thought process makes it clear that the clothes are too far away, which means the best option would be to return to the bathroom. Trying to hide from prying eyes, the girl does not know where to start. While, on the other hand, screams and orders are heard again. Thalia's face lights up with insidious colors. This snake clearly takes wild pleasure in trying to somehow ruin everything for everyone around him. The maid does everything only for one thing, because she has no other goal. She wants to dishonor the Duchess by showing her naked body to the servants, and then just laugh at the whole thing. I absolutely don't want to follow this upstart's lead, and that's why the girl slowly goes to the bottom, clutching her knees. The beauty could have simply fallen into the water, but she is not going to give up in front of it. She shouldn't just pop up and see that terrible look on that person's face. The air slowly leaves the young lady's lungs. I don't want to admit it, but it seems that she still lost this battle. You will have to emerge and thereby disgrace yourself and the entire kingdom. Someone's hand suddenly grabs the heroine's wrist, thereby pulling her out of the water right behind him. This was the help that was to be expected. Hands carefully throw a gray corduroy jacket directly over the girl's shoulders, trying to somehow protect her from everything that's happening. Cassius looks straight into his companion's eyes, advising her to wear the suggested item to make everything much easier. This will warm the girl and hide her from prying eyes. Turning his head in the other direction, the man gives orders to the servants. If life is dear to any of them, they must now lie face down on the floor, and this is not discussed. Hugging the young lady a little, the guy orders everyone to leave here. Otherwise, they will be in very bad shape. This choice is not something simple, considering that it is not there at all. Realizing that words really work, the Duke watches as two guys quickly, almost stumbling, try to run out. Turning back to his wife, the young man, a little reproaching, notices how careless she is. She should be more careful. Otherwise, things may not end as they should. Looking down, the girl notices that Cass is probably angry. She simply disgraces him greatly in front of everyone around him, and this should not be denied. Suddenly, the body began to shake, as if someone was standing and shaking the poor girl. The heroine notices that her body gave way at the wrong time. The young man is still standing opposite and trying to understand what is happening here. He is also very interested in why this strange phenomenon began. Turning sharply, Euclid is about to leave. Perhaps he has nothing more to say, so he decides to run away without any explanation. And this is the reason. Various uninvited thoughts creep into your head without asking permission at all. The man is probably so disappointed that he doesn't even want to talk to her. A sharp awareness of what is happening occurs to the young lady. Maybe now is a chance to talk about divorce, and then everything will work out for the best. Cassius still doesn't move, but just stands near the door. The beauty, still wrapped in his jacket, is trying to catch up, because now you can't make a mistake. Already almost next to her husband, the blonde wants to start a conversation, but she is interrupted by calling her name out loud. It's impossible not to stare at this handsome man. He is like a stone statue, and his beautiful eyes look like amethysts. Already raising her finger to her palm, she hears about patience, and that even it has its limits. Only one thing is not clear, and that is who she is in his eyes. It is worth quickly raising the topic she needs. The girl offers to get a divorce, again lowering her eyes to the floor. She is ashamed to run after Euclid, trying to please him, but this is necessary because she doesn't want him to get angry anymore. Frowning his brows, the young man's patience seemed to have truly come to an end. Raising his voice, but trying to remain calm, he repeats that they will not get a divorce. Exhaling air, Urania seemed not to expect a different answer, but still decides to ask if he blames himself. The pupils increase sharply, while the young man asks what she just said. Trying to speak as quietly as possible so as not to provoke anything, the beauty claims that everything happened because of her. Smiling just out of the corner of her mouth, Rennie seems to be trying to calm her down, saying that she shouldn't blame herself, and this couldn't be what she wants. Putting his palm to his forehead, he stares indignantly at the blonde. According to him, he doesn't think so, and why should he think in such a strange way when he can do the opposite? Narrowing his eyes, the guy suddenly blurts out a strange phrase. This Urania is a treacherous woman, even if it is not true in any way. The girl seemed to be in great shock. She wonders what happened that now they are talking to her in this way. Once again, turning to the spouse asks, or rather warns, that the topic of divorce should never be raised again. Quick steps help to hide behind the door, leaving the lady completely alone. Hope seemed to be fading with every second, but then his gaze fell on the whistle lying on the side near the pool. Without thinking twice, my lady grabs the little thing, puts it to her lips, and then begins to blow as if calling the Duke back. They haven't reached an agreement yet, so there's no need to go anywhere. He must stay so the conversation can be completed. Letting go of the whistle, the girl freezes, while the young man again asks what she is doing and why it's all for. Running back, the man grabs the blonde by the shoulders, screaming in her face. They will never divorce, and the conversation is over. Leaning even closer to his interlocutor, he repeats his words, saying over and over again that this will never happen. Deciding that this is the most important moment to do something necessary, the Duchess tries to say at least one word, pretending that the voice is returning to her. The Duke's eyes widen. Becoming more confident, the girl tries to repeat the same word, but louder, in order to make it clearer. There is no limit to surprise. At first, completely silent, the guy just glares at the floor. It's amazing, but she can speak and thus leads to a stupor. Smiling her most charming smile, the beauty confirms his guesses and asks him not to worry about anything like that anymore, since there is no need for this. Still trying to figure out what is what, Euclid, already knowing the answer, nevertheless decides to ask in advance. Is this really the girl's real voice? He clearly cannot believe that all this somehow became possible. But there is no way out, and he will have to believe. The girl, closing her eyes, silently nods her head. The first thought that comes to mind turns out to be the most successful. The man asks if she sees him now, to which she receives the expected answer. Yes, he clearly looks happy. His heart became much easier because he experienced pain no less than physical due to the fact that he could not change anything. Trying to reassure and assure that everything is fine, Urania claims that she is now completely fine, and there is really nothing more to worry about. Harsh but completely unexpected words escape the interlocutor's lips. He promises to do whatever the young lady wants. The only thing he would like is for the girl to stop shaking like a leaf, because it feels like she is cold or afraid of something. The offer sounds quite tempting. Who wouldn't want to get everything they want out of the blue? Opening her mouth again, the blonde again wants to ask for a divorce, but she is interrupted. The man took care of this in advance, so he says that only no divorce and Seda Callisto. Surprised by such a strange condition, the girl does not understand what her old childhood friend has to do with it, but she never receives an answer. Turning again to the lady, the Duke again asks what she still needs. Your wishes can be absolutely anything, regardless of size or price. A little embarrassed to ask, the beauty puts her hand to her face, trying to ask about what she needs, namely, some money. First of all, you will have to meet with Saeed in order to find a decent doctor. Only with the help of other people will you be able to fully recover. In the end, everything will change. And when the girl is completely stronger, she will be able to live independently and normally. This plan is impeccable, but for all this money is very important and necessary, without which nothing will work. Perhaps there's no need to rush into a divorce. The blonde really needs money, and maybe not even a little, but a lot. If Cassius is worried about the heroine's condition, then it's worth waiting. and as soon as he manages to recover, he can immediately be freed from such a burden. Continuing to ask for money, the beauty literally insisted on her request, and now the volumes have increased. Clarifying whether this is all accurate, the guy asks if the girl, after fulfilling her request, will continue to talk about divorce. Hearing a satisfactory answer, he just smiles. Realizing that this could make life easier, the Duke silently agrees with all the proposed options. There is no point in saying anything more. The guy advises to leave here, but the blonde first asks to call Lena in order to change clothes. I don't really want to walk around in just a jacket. While in another room, the girl is waiting for the maid, when a woman appears and immediately asks the question, "Whose jacket is this?" Approaching closer, the brunette takes a closer look at the thing and then realizes with horror that it is the Duke's thing. The cheeks light up red. It seems that the maid's head is now a complete mess. She's trying to somehow explain the whole situation without words. Pretending not to understand, Lena first looks at Cassius, who stares back but looks rather tired. The next look is directed at Urania, but this time the girl puts her hands to her mouth out of a desire to scream with joy. By clasping her hands, the maid seems to be trying to express her genuine delight, even if she did not understand everything correctly. It's definitely worth it. A little nervous, the lady calls her friend by name, thereby as if trying to bring her to emotions, of which there is a whole mountain. The hair on the brunette's head literally stands on end. She certainly did not expect such a turn of events, and it was not seen that everything would happen in such a manner. Jumping on the spot, Lena runs up to the mistress with lightning speed, trying to believe and check the reality of what is happening. It is completely strange, and at the same time unusual that the voice has returned, no longer holding back her emotions. The beauty smiles. It's hard not to notice that the expression on her face is completely sincere, because she is really happy for the hostess. I don't want to admit it, but Lena is the only person in the whole world who always cares and treats you well. Approaching the Duke, the maid asks the man to leave the room as the lady wants to take a bath. This time, everything should be much easier. The guy doesn't show any signs, not even saying a single word, which makes quite a lot clear. Standing directly in front of Urania, the maid seems to obscure the body of the young lady. She says that she knows about their untested wedding night. But if he continues to stare like that, the girl will become uncomfortable. Placing her arms to the sides, the brunette tries to be as assertive as possible. It's surprising that such a small and fragile maid manages to resist her own master. Trying not to show it, the young man slowly exhales. He understood everything, and therefore all that remains is to agree and nod his head in understanding. It all looked as if a small rabbit was fighting off a panther, while the other one stood behind and watched it all. As soon as all the unnecessary people in the person of her husband left the room, the blonde decided to tell everything as it happened. Lena's face expressed disgust. Only half an hour had passed. But when the girls came out of the bath, there was a rather tense atmosphere in the room. Two men stood next to a maid who was sitting on her knees. The young man did not immediately notice those present, but as soon as this happened, he immediately turned and called, asking them to come closer. Urania didn't know what to say, so she simply narrowed her eyes and tried not to react to everyone present, knowing full well that this wouldn't end so easily. Thalia began to make excuses again. She seemed to go out of her way to prove that she didn't mean to do anything, but it just happened that way. Euclid remains completely unshaken. He had already repeated 1,000,000 times that if he insulted his wife, he was also insulted, but the woman obviously did not want to listen to this. The Duchess has absolutely nothing to say. She doesn't want to see all this, but she also doesn't have the power to object, because lynching was carried out over Thalia. Cass's eyes turned black from the anger he felt. Since when does a servant have the right to make excuses, even after everything she has done? The impudence clearly exceeded all boundaries. Normal words have no effect on the maid, as she continues to make excuses. She asks to listen to her because Urania made everything up and in general is simply deceiving everyone without ceremony. Without thinking about her words for a long time, the woman reaches out her hand and points her index finger at the girls standing next to her. All this time, the lady pretended to do nothing and rest, trying to explain how naive everyone is. Because Rennie only took advantage of her husband's kindness, Thalia looks completely crazy. Tilting her head to the side, the girl asks if the maid really thinks so. She knew about her oddities, but did not think that she would blame just anyone. Almost screaming, the brunette asks how she dares to look at her like that. The mistress is a liar, so you should switch back to brainwashing the master. Trying to calm the tension in her voice, the blonde asks if the maid can answer for her words, to which she receives another sling of mud. Deciding that the time had come for revelation, the lady began a conversation about the waste of the budget, for which, as we know, Thalia is responsible. Still, without the strength to come to terms, the woman continues to be indignant, completely not understanding what the young lady wants to say by this. The check has not yet been completed, but it has already been possible to find out that 30 times more was spent on seeds for the garden than was required. Trying to remain calm, the maid finally closed her mouth and stopped trying to protest at all costs. It was not clear where this hated person knew about everything. All evidence was destroyed, but even this did not save the situation. The Duchess proposes to restrict Thalia's freedom during the inspection. Without even trying to listen to any arguments, the man turns and gives an order. The woman should be locked in the Eastern Tower. Horror is shown on the girl's face. It seems that she will cry, but no one listens to her anymore because she has made quite a lot of mistakes. Not very pleasant memories overtake Urania's mind. The East Tower is the exact place where she was locked away in her previous life. The place is incredibly disgusting. Even during the day, you become covered in dust, and leaving there is like being born again because this tower devours all sorts of strength. My hands start shaking again. It was there, at the top of the tower, that the Duchess was locked until she quietly departed from life due to her own mistakes. A sudden cloudiness appeared as if out of nowhere. It's difficult to stand on your feet, so you have to lean on the wall. Lena immediately runs up, asking if the lady is okay. A rude voice is heard right from behind the maid. The stern tone seems to warn, saying that he is not to be trifled with. She is asked to leave. The Duke approaches the couple and gently grabs his wife's shoulders. He doesn't know exactly how to help her, but there is definitely a way out. Lifting her a little, the guy carefully takes the girl in his arms. He should treat her as carefully as possible, as if he were treating a porcelain doll. Urania's eyes are tightly closed, and a drop of sweat rolls down her face, which indicates that the girl clearly has a fever. It's completely unclear where to start, and slight panic appears on the guy's face. However, he has no choice, since he must continue to do what he is obliged to do. A couple walks along the corridor. The betrothed already seems to have regained consciousness a little, but is still like a weightless feather, unable to control her body. There's nothing left to do but look at Cass directly. Thoughts cannot come together, but now he knows that his vision and voice are completely restored. Obviously surprised, but he didn't ask anything. Deciding not to remain silent any longer, Renee strikes up a conversation, asking if her husband is interested in how this happened. The man stubbornly remains silent. He doesn't like being asked questions or asked about something he doesn't want to talk about. The girl didn't want it, but accidentally noticed her hair somewhere near Cass's neck. Her hair is absolutely everywhere now. Attempts to pull out the scrap were not as successful as in the heroine's head. They were just stuck, and now it was all terribly awkward. Only a minute passed before the realization overwhelmed the main character. She was only a few centimeters from the man's face. The face instantly turned red. Trying to push the young man away, the Duchess turned even more pink with embarrassment. I couldn't believe that a situation similar to this had just happened. Without making any attempts to stop her incomprehensible stream of words, the girl talks about how beautiful her interlocutor is. Grinning, the Duke asks if this is a kind of compliment, to which he receives the answer, yes. It really sounds quite strange, but which one is ideal? Cass nevertheless decides to conduct a survey, so he asks how his voice and vision returned, to which he receives an obvious answer. This is all thanks to the grass that was found on the lake. It was the yang grass that served as an antidote, which helped a lot. Trying not to look into her eyes anymore, the heroine remembered how she was told that the young man had carried her in his arms. Euclid exhales, but then admits that after that incident he began to think about the young lady much more often. The slight pang of disappointment did not want to give rest. It turns out that until now he did not care either about the Duchess herself or about her illness. In principle, this was not even very surprising, since the Duchess expected exactly such behavior. She treated the man coldly, and so it was obvious. The unexpected question breaks off abruptly, as if waiting for such a moment. The girl wonders what the guy saw that day. Not quite understanding what is happening and what is being said, Cassius only asks again what exactly the question is. It's difficult to say those very words, but finding at least a drop of courage in herself, Rennie mentions that incident in the bathroom. A sharp, stormy stream of mild anger covers the Duke like a wave. He didn't know that his wife considered him that way, and that's why he asked. Euclid already wants to say something, and even begins a sentence, but never finishes it. His face contorts strangely, and then he falls silent. The young man's eyes widen, because he doesn't understand what happened and why everything was suddenly interrupted, but looking at his interlocutor, everything becomes clear. Urania is already lying unconscious in the guy's arms. Her cheeks are still red, either from embarrassment or from fever, but there is only one conclusion. She is not able to take care of herself. The last thing that came to mind was the frightened expression on the Duke's face, who was quickly figuring out what to do. It had been dark outside for a long time. There was a beautiful fireplace burning in the room, which warmed everyone around with its fire. Cass is sitting on a luxurious red sofa, looking somewhere to the side. He thinks aloud about the girl's actions. She jumped into the lake after him, and that was the beginning of the end. It's not surprising that the guy developed big feelings after this kind of incident, even if, in fact, it happened long before. He still won't be able to turn away from the girl because she is very dear to him, and it cannot be denied that she is also very pretty. Thoughtfully placing his palm on his cheek, the young man remembers the divorce. It is still unclear why she raised this topic so calmly. It felt like the lady had been preparing for this for a long time. Perhaps Sade had something to do with this. The logic and logical chain could not be clearly traced here, but one could think about it. The wood continues to burn in the fireplace, producing a characteristic crackling sound. This does not interfere or even interrupt the thought process. For the first time, the young people met long before the wedding. The beauty came to the hospital to visit the Duchess of Euclid. It was difficult not to look at this young lady, because despite the loss of her voice and vision, she was all radiant. No one doubted that she was ready to jump into fire and water for the sake of others. Initially, the Duke was supposed to marry either the eldest or middle daughter of Herodes. However, after an incident in the hospital, the man decided everything for himself. Count Vincent asked to do this, and the guy, of course, agreed. Everything was fine, except for one detail. After Urania became his wife, she stopped smiling completely. The girl was always scared, and it seemed that someone was contributing to this. This couldn't happen because of the Duke. A little more time passed, and the lady began to avoid the man. She did not seek a meeting with him, but on the contrary, tried to prevent any attempt to get closer. I couldn't wrap my head around why this was happening. Sometimes it felt like she was forced to marry Euclid. The guilt for everything that was happening grew and fell in a huge lump on the young man, so he began to avoid meeting with the blonde. Nobody knew that everything would turn out this way. If Urania wants to get a divorce for Callisto, then Cass will definitely not give in. Now this is his wife, and he definitely won't give her to anyone. The guy gets up from his chair and heads towards the exit. He is confident that he can do more than that degenerate ever could. He doesn't care about anyone else. His attitude towards his woman should no longer concern anyone. He can try to make her happy as many times as he wants. Exactly like Urania, having jumped into the icy water, he was not going to hesitate. The beauty lies on the bed, experiencing internal pain. The girl still hasn't opened up, hasn't made it clear the essence of her soul, but love cannot be earned at the snap of a finger. There's more to come. Breaking from his thoughts, Cass walks to the front door and pulls the cord, thereby calling one of the staff. A second later, a servant appears, who obediently bows his head, awaiting orders, and asks what is required of him. We need a chief doctor, preferably urgently. A few minutes later, the boy returns with a man in a white coat. The doctor looks quite serious, but becomes even more serious when he is informed of his illness. Cassius's stern voice will put everyone in their place. He needs the Duchess to be treated, so that tomorrow she will feel better and no longer feel this bad. Hair scatters all over the pillow, as if someone had deliberately arranged it this way. The girl lies like a sleeping beauty with her eyes closed, showing no signs of movement. It's already early morning outside. The sun's rays try very hard to get into the room, even if all the curtains are tightly closed. Even without opening your eyes, the first thing you should do is put your hand to your face and then rub your eye. She doesn't know exactly how long she slept, but it wasn't a good dream. Sitting up on the bed, the girl doesn't quite understand where she is and what day it is. It's quite annoying that she has such lapses in memory and nothing works. A voice from somewhere to the left interrupts the simple morning routine. Someone exclaims, not believing that the blonde has finally woken up. Standing next to the bed is none other than Lena. She smiles, sincerely rejoicing at such a miracle. Perhaps she really missed her mistress. Then everything is again as if in a fog. The maid rushes around the room like the wind, looking for the tray, and then brings it, providing the necessary medicine. Surprise freezes on the beauty's face for a split second. Everything happened too quickly. The maid, almost crying, talks about how worried she was. Lowering her gaze somewhere to the floor, the Duchess does not express any emotions. The only question that interests her is, why? Trying to explain the situation, swallowing more air, and trying to calm down, the friend talks about how worried everyone was. This is not a joke, but the girl slept for 2 days. The heroine's eyes immediately widen because she thought that much less time had passed than 2 days. This is not a good sign. Realization hits the blonde, and she realizes that things are clearly bad. Something needs to be done, but to do this, you need to at least get back on your feet. The first thing I remember is the meeting with Saeed. The Duchess herself appointed her today, although her friend did not insist on anything. Last time, everything went wrong, which means we can't make a mistake again. An unexpected cloudiness takes over the eye. Dark shadows blur, obscuring your vision. Someone seemed to have splashed black and blue paint in front of his eyes. I would like to wipe it and get better visibility, but this does not happen. Lena runs up with lightning speed and carefully supports the mistress, trying to prevent her from getting up. She has not yet fully recovered, which means it is not time to get up yet. Realizing that she was already late anyway, Urania wonders with disappointment what to do. Perhaps the best solution would be to schedule an appointment for another day. Taking the comb in her hands, the maid begins to comb her friend's long curls while simultaneously telling her something. They are in the Duke's room, and all this time he has been caring for his wife. The maid stood up abruptly and began to imitate the master, or rather, the pose in which he brought the blonde to the estate. The brunette seemed ready to scream with joy. Urania decided not to interrupt her thoughts, because she thought that she was again making things up for herself. After a while, as soon as the interlocutor calmed down, the topic changed to something more important. According to the maid, Cassius sent money to manage the estate. This will make the task much easier. The heroine's face lit up with joy, and she began to smile. Her request was nevertheless fulfilled in the best possible way, and therefore this could not but rejoice. A beautiful chest with a lot of gold was placed in front of the Duchess. It was impossible to say that it was small, because the chest was simply huge. Slowly opening her mouth in surprise, the girl exclaimed to herself, not understanding how it happened. She really needed money. That was more than enough. Suddenly, Lena announced that this was not all. According to her, with such a man, you can build an entire estate. The blonde didn't know what to say. Deciding to pull herself together, the mistress falls silent and then turns to the maid again. She needs to ask for something. The only request would be that all this money should be placed in a vault that only one person has access to. While people are running away with all the gold, it's time to think about how to properly use all this money. This is the most interesting activity. Not much time passed, but the young lady had already managed to move to the dining room. She did not have much difficulty moving around the castle. Approaching the door, it opened, and the girl successfully walked inside and then sat down on the chair. Sitting directly opposite is the Duke, who for the time being decides to remain completely silent, but look literally into his very soul. Rising from his seat, the man approaches and carefully moves the heroine's chair, asking how she is feeling. Perhaps this is really important to him if he is so worried. It's better to use a less verbose vocabulary and just say that everything is great. Smiling, the guy rejoices at this news. Then there is complete silence. The lady only thinks about that incident in the bathroom. After everything that happened, it's somehow too awkward. Cass doesn't seem to feel any awkwardness at all, because he starts talking about a completely different topic. Don't overload yourself, as health is much more important. Remembering one more detail, the lady thanks her husband for staying with her all night. The answer is dry and unusual, because it is just his duty. Also, the money will definitely be useful. You definitely shouldn't pretend to be a prude, otherwise the man might not like it. Bowing his head in agreement, he only says that if there is not enough, all she has to do is say so, and they will immediately send her more. All that remains is to agree. My thoughts are occupied with something completely different, namely, how beautiful he is today. The power of money is quite strong, and there is no denying it. Sometimes it takes over your thoughts and makes you feel dizzy, but it's worth it. A familiar voice pulls you out of your thoughts. Cassius reminds that the Duchess has not only responsibilities, but also privileges. You shouldn't get carried away with or without reason. The best option would be to simply enjoy your life as much as possible. This man has been trying to show off the Duchess's advantages from the very beginning, even if it's all for his reputation. The Duchy of Euclid is a family with a long history comparable to the imperial one. Even the emperor himself is not a decree to Cassius. I didn't want to remember, but that's why Count Vincent targeted this man. The father wanted to make the girl his puppet. With her help, destroy everyone around and then destroy even herself. But nothing came of it. A hand in a white glove brings the tray and then holds out a plate with a dish. Some strange orange soup that smells incredibly delicious. Turning to the servant, the girl refuses the next dish. It's hard to explain why, but that's what she needed. The guy straightens up and obediently agrees. He promises that everything will be fulfilled, which means there will be no next snack. Noticing the strange behavior of the person standing next to her, the heroine grins nervously, asking what is happening. Trying not to make a mistake, the young man bends down and then closes his eyes. The hostess's voice is terribly beautiful, and this is the real reason. Euclid's face becomes angry in a split second, so much so that his eyes begin to darken. It seems that the interlocutor has lost fear. The Duke noisily places the utensil he was using for dinner on the table. He doesn't like the servant's behavior, and that says it all, even without any debate. The boy quickly apologizes, while the blonde's eyes widen to an impossible size. It was a rather incomprehensible attack. The eyes turn back to the plate. The food is no longer too interesting, but the look in the back of the husband is quite scary. It is unlikely that the girl will ever get used to it. You shouldn't even turn around, because this way you can also feel everything perfectly. The look literally burns a hole. Turning towards the guy, the lady realizes that he is still staring, but it's difficult why exactly. His gaze is no longer frightening, but simply calm. Without thinking for a long time, the blonde makes the first request she comes across. The best solution would be to fire Thalia, for which she gets a quick agreement, and then the question of breakfast. Pretending that she does not understand at all what is being said, the beauty just shakes her head. She's not going to eat anything else, and that's it. This news did not make the interlocutor very happy. You need to eat more and thereby maintain normal health. A plate of food immediately appeared in front of the girl. The face stretched out from surprise and speed of action, but if this is her duty, then she will have to fulfill it. The girl stared at the plate. The only thing that could be noticed was the deliciously laid-out food that smelled nice. The young man was a little embarrassed, realizing that he had again blurted out something inappropriate. It's too late to make excuses, but it's worth a try, so he says he didn't mean it that way. Turning to her interlocutor, obvious embarrassment appeared on the beauty's face. Perhaps she just misunderstood something, or perhaps it is much more complicated. Cass was quite frightening with his habits, and sometimes I just wanted to run away and not listen to all this in order to remain calm. Euclid asks if he scared his betrothed when he ordered her to eat more, to which he received a simple answer. The girl just hasn't eaten meat for a long time. The peric herb has a strong effect on digestion, so every time after trying to eat meat, the heroine felt sick. The best way now was to eat quietly and chew slowly. The food actually smelled amazing. The fork carefully pricks the meat to then place it in the mouth. The piece disappears in the mouth as if evaporating. I really can't wait to chew everything and get good taste sensations and pleasure. This dish is simply amazing. It seems as if fireworks have even appeared around, broadcasting wonderful taste subtleties. The blonde was happy to herself. It had been a long time since she had tasted truly excellent meat, so this was completely new. Chewing was quite difficult, since the teeth were not used to such food, even if the food was cooked really well. Cassius grinned, asking how it happened that just from one piece of meat she was so wildly delighted. Without saying a word, the girl just turns her gaze somewhere to the side. This moment is terribly reminiscent of something else, something that has already been seen before. The incident in the bathroom is very similar, but at the same time it is completely unclear how it happened that the person thought about all this. The picture never wanted to appear normally, but even in this situation the girl became absolutely red, like a tomato. Trying to clear her throat and thereby forget about everything that is happening, the beauty replaces her thoughts with something else, and completely unfamiliar. Not even a second had passed before my husband immediately perked up, asking about this strange cough. He couldn't believe that his wife was still unwell. Smiling and trying to change the topic, the blonde argues that she is not quite used to talking yet. She can't say that she choked while she thought about the handsome man's face opposite her. The words were not very convincing, so the brunette called Guile to call a doctor. Any deviations must be checked personally. In a split second, the butler is already standing near the table. He is put in charge of Urania's health. Anger grips a young girl. However, if you think about it, Guile really is a talent, because after working with Cassius for so long, he is still fine. His position is quite difficult. Interrupting his thought process, the man turns to the woman again, asking if she likes the food. Lifting the napkin and then applying it to her lips, the girl only quietly says that everything is fine. It was the first time she managed to eat so much meat. Bowing his head in confusion, the Duke asks again as if he heard it. I can't believe this is the first time this has happened. He still didn't hear. So the next step was for the guy to push a plate with a wonderful dessert in the form of strawberries and tartlets. The eyes widened and the mouth parted in surprise. It seems that instead of a cook, the owner completely accidentally hired an artist. Without thinking twice, the Duchess grabs the cake and brings it to her mouth. You definitely need to try everything. The eyes light up, and a living sparkle glows somewhere near the pupils. This food is truly a work of art. Not paying attention to anyone, as if the blonde was talking to herself about how delicious it was and how much she wanted another portion. The heroine tries such tartlets for the first time, and this is a completely different story because it is different from meat. When the girl lived in the palace due to health problems, no one wanted to feed her cakes, and only Side managed to bring something tasty. The already well-known stage of anger returns to normal. The eyes narrow as the young man asks about Callisto. Without any further thought, Rennie says yes, and then continues to eat the deliciousness that she just wants to completely destroy. This answer clearly does not suit Cass, but he just continues to remain silent. He has nothing to say, because he doesn't want to spoil the mood of everyone around him. The Duke holds a bell in his hand, which is usually used to call servants. The sound spreads throughout all the chambers. Within a few minutes, there's a variety of food on the table. Lots of colorful dishes with beautiful and delicious fruits on top. A surprised look runs over all the potions, while the girl does not understand at all how she can manage to eat everything at once. Having tried everything, eyes run in different directions, while the beauty thinks more and more about the safety of her figure and health. Looking further along the table, the blonde notices that there is, of course, a lot of food here, but at the same time, it's not bad. The guy is clearly pleased with his work. He managed to make the heroine feel good and enjoy herself at the same time, without even starting to eat. The beautiful alley is planted with roses and climbing ivy. This road is simply beautiful, but it is a secret place in the garden that the servants avoid. Someone's heels click on the tiles, and then the sound of a person is heard approaching. The man who comes up says that he was waiting for the Duchess. A hand in a white glove holds an incomprehensible small bag in the palm. The man seems to be offering to accept the little thing. The blonde looks at her interlocutor, trying to understand what is being offered to her, and thinking that she can split her opponent with her gaze and get answers. Guile smiles, finally revealing that there are cookies inside for the road that you might like. Words of gratitude are the only thing the heroine can offer. The next words were about the former maid. The girl was right, because Thalia and Sir Gerard sometimes met. These meetings took place more than once a week. Realization washed over me like a mad wave. Ophelia had been right all along, and her information shouldn't have sounded strange. There were no reasons for mistrust. Gerard proposed expanding the temple. The servant hands over an old, dark notebook, saying that this is the ledger of the knights. It's worth taking a look at what's inside. Opening the thing and examining the pages, Urania notices that such an innovation would cost a lot of money, but there is no spending at all, as if someone was trying to clean up their tracks. One little line gets a lot of attention. Secondary income is where, according to reporting, quite a lot of money went. Taking the notebook, the young man looks at the pages in surprise. Secondary income is the amount withdrawn after the completion of the project. Usually, it is no more than 10%. But here, everything is different. An interesting thought comes to mind out of nowhere. The head of the knights could take all the money for himself in this way, and reporting exists for the law. The servant nods in agreement, to which he receives another thank you. The Duchess really needs your assistance in order to quickly finish the investigation. The topic of conversation changed and returned to normal again. The butler announced that Saeed had arrived 5 minutes ago and was now waiting in the hall. The best option was to simply meet him at the estate. There is no need to go anywhere and get overtired when everything is right here. The girl hurried inside and after a while entered the main room. Little is visible from behind the back of the chair, but if you dig a hair, you can see it anywhere. Smiling, Urania happily runs up to the guy. She's really happy to see her old friend and doesn't care how he behaves. The man, without giving any sign, simply turns around, and an insidious but kind smile lights up his face. Surprise quickly turns to shock as he finally hears Rennie's voice. I can't believe that my friend's ability to speak has returned. Trying not to show his happiness, the young man decides to joke again, complaining that the blonde no longer squeaks. A little confused as to how his voice managed to recover so quickly, the handsome man thoughtfully puts his fingers to his chin. He should guess. But it's difficult. Trying not to pay attention to such trifles, the girl only confirms what happened because everything was restored really quickly. Callisto is finally silent, but it's always like this with him. Before the storm, there comes a calm, and this is not always good in this case. The Duchess, bowing her head, seems to be silently asking questions. She wonders what Ced needs and what his next step will be. Folding his arms across his chest, the man asks to return to his precious time. A friend has wasted it twice, and now she won't get away with it so easily. As if mocking, Callisto notices that even the third time the lady managed to be late. It was no longer even human. Trying to apologize, the beauty tries to make excuses, saying that last time she had a good reason, because she felt very bad. Realizing that now they will waste a lot of time, Ced tries to move away from the topic, leaning towards his interlocutor. Extending his hand, the friend runs his fingers through his snow-white hair and then just as slowly removes his palm, as if doing it to tease. The girl was clearly not very pleased with this attitude towards herself, but since this is her old acquaintance, she has no choice. The young man's eyes light up with curiosity. Leaning even closer, he asks what happened and why she can now talk. The eyes close in laughter, as Said tries to be as friendly as possible towards the others. This look made it clear that the man was already impatient to know all the details, down to the smallest, even if it was not particularly important to him. Books stand in neat stacks on the shelves. Some of them might be useful, but not all of them. The story is coming to an end. The blonde told absolutely everything except returning to the past. This game is too dangerous for anyone's ears. Putting his hand to his cheek, showing how tired he is of everything, Callisto hums something about how bored he is here. This needs to be fixed. Straightening up, the Duchess, clearly offended by the behavior of her acquaintance, decides to joke, saying that the young man only needs stories about perversions. Deciding not to be distracted from the pressing problem, the brunette turns to Rennie again. He thinks he sees something, and it's strange. The girl exudes a strong, magical aura. A person who sees all these things can quite easily see a beautiful color distributed around the blonde. The girl frowns. She is not here to listen to all this, but to find out what kind of magic began to bubble in the young body. Leaning forward, Urania literally pinches Sita, not even giving him the right to move. He has no choice but to tell her everything. The facial features change dramatically, and instead of a cheerful expression, a wary and serious one comes to replace it. The guy said that he didn't know anything because they were still small children, but from the age of 12, he began to feel growing strength. Then the whole situation began to spiral. Confirming his words, the young man only added that perhaps Count Vincent did something to Rennie, and it is because of this that she now has a lot of problems. Now, for the moment, the power is sealed, but over time it breaks out drop by drop. Everything is just fine, but over time the magic tries to break out, never sparing or asking permission. Putting her finger to her mouth, the girl sighs in surprise. She can't believe that this exists, and besides, it's all right inside her. Continuing her thoughts, Urania notices that Callisto is so handsome and also smart. It's hard not to notice this when a person is nearby. Just starting his tirade of sarcasm and jokes, the guy suddenly stammers, asking what just happened here. The heroine seems to be completely oblivious. She rejoices in the fact that her friend saw the magic in her, and now she should start doing something about it. The young man turns away, not knowing what to say. There was some not-so-good news, too. It was worth remembering that only Count Vincent could completely remove the seal. Suddenly, one interesting detail emerges. When the girl was 12, her father brought a wizard to the house to perform a ritual. While still very young, the blonde was scared and did not understand what was happening. She didn't want anything done to her. The magician looked quite intimidating, and seemed as if he was looking straight into the soul of the main character. She wasn't so pleased, even though Vincent didn't ask her anything. Trying to retreat in the hope of running away somewhere or hiding somewhere, Rennie did not understand what to do. The palm falls on the shoulder. A moment later, it doesn't stop there, and the hand passes over the face, and the thumb with a massive ring ends up right between the eyes. The frightened gaze seems to drill a hole in everyone passing by. It's difficult for a girl to understand how it will all end, so it's easier to come to terms with it. When this wizard touched the woman's body, it seemed as if part of the essence had evaporated somewhere. One of the most disgusting sensations I have ever experienced. Instead of magic, unbearable pain appeared, from which the lady passed out and did not remember anything else. I can't believe it, but it looks like Vincent decided to take away his powers. The Empire has been fighting monsters for many years. These creatures were no worse than people because they did everything clearly, and because of this, they were unable to complete what they started. 30 years ago, right before the end, wizards and warriors were at the very top. These individuals were the most important. With warriors, everything is easier, but raising a wizard is another task with an asterisk. It was after meeting such a person that Urania was forbidden to leave the estate. Obviously, the Count tried his best to prevent all possible consequences. This man is absolutely disgusting, and there is no point in asking. Suddenly, a friend's voice pulls you out of your memories. He reminds himself, asking what could break the seal. As far as we know, such magic can last for hundreds of years. An interesting thought comes to mind, even if there is no time to think about it. Perhaps the poison of the parak herb helped speed up the process. Callisto closes his eyes in agreement. This theory didn't sound so bad, according to the expert. However, the Duke could not help but notice the strength growing inside his wife. It's only a matter of time, but perhaps he has already noticed or will notice soon. Cutting off all the wires, Euclid says that the guy is now in the capital and therefore doesn't know anything about it. There's still a week left. Deciding to change the topic to something more interesting to her, her friend turns to Saidu, asking how she can hide her powers without harming everyone else. Putting his palm to his face, the man pretends that he does not know how, while he repeats the question asked. But this is just false. Moving his hand away, the young man smiles, saying that of course he knows how, because he has already prepared for a long time, knowing exactly where he is going and why. Rennie's eyebrows frowned when she started talking about some junk, some extremely valuable thing that needs to be stored. Pulling the item from his pocket, Callisto reveals a special blue bracelet. He can't wait to see the reaction. Realizing that there is absolutely no point in trying to say anything, the blonde asks how much such a miracle will cost. An old friend definitely didn't expect such a straightforward approach. Even after laughing, he names the price of 300 zlotys, pointing on his fingers. There was no surprise, since the Duchess states that it is cheap and costs almost the same as a dress. Questions pour in from Saida, but with folded hands, the girl mentions that one should not underestimate the wealth of the duchy. The thing quickly falls into the hands of the young lady. She can't help but be happy about this, because this bracelet will save her from literal collapse. The thought that she is finally given the opportunity to know what it is like to be rich warms her thoughts. A friend nearby complains that he didn't ask for more. Forgetting about this incident, the man asks to lend a hand. The briefing was carried out, and all because there are not many functions here. It is worth clicking on the main stone to hide your powers. Showing where to press in order to release it, the acquaintance simultaneously informs about one more small detail. The bracelet will last only a month. Disappointment envelops the main character when she asks if this is true. It was clearly not expected that there would be such a short period of time. Not happy with this reaction, Callisto begins to make excuses, saying that this thing is very rare and also without side effects. Stretching out his hand, he asks for the item back. Realizing that there is still no other option, the girl hides her hand, refusing such an offer. Everything can still be fixed. Cassius must never learn about magical powers. If necessary, you can buy another copy of this type, and then this will simplify the situation. Changing the topic again, remembering one important detail, the heroine asks about her treatment. The brunette promised to find her a good doctor. Smiling, the young man, as if nothing had happened, invites the lady to the capital for a holiday in 2 days. Just what you need. Not expecting such a turn of events, the beauty stares and asks again. She didn't even hear about the celebration. Already getting up from his seat, the guy talks about the right person who will definitely appear there at the right moment. Don't underestimate people. Trying to object, Euclid is clearly trying to detain his friend with his words. This doesn't work out very well. A smoke screen appears out of nowhere. It seems like someone pulled this trick on purpose, and everyone even knows who it was. Turning towards his friend, the brunette winks, promising that they will see each other again in the near future, and then disappears. Coughing, the Duchess thinks about how tired she is of this. The best option would be to leave like a normal person. The most beautiful dessert stands right in the middle of the table. The exquisite taste and pleasant aroma beckon you, trying to force you to eat it. The blonde takes the spoon in her hands, then dips it into the mold, and then smiles. This is an incredibly tasty dish, without any doubt. In a past life, the heroine was deprived of such joy, and it was quite sad. I didn't want to remember how the young lady suffered. Count Vincent, according to all the laws of logic and calculations, should very soon try to do something and thereby ruin everything. The door opens quietly, and Gil appears in the room. Bowing obligingly, the guy doesn't say a word, just looking at his interlocutor. A quick smile appears on Euclid's face. She always needs to be friendly and keep up her face in order to remain in the circles of servants. The man did not expect such behavior, but still does not really show his embarrassment, saving face. Leaning forward, the guy notifies that the designers will arrive in an hour, to which he receives easy consent. The blonde can't wait for this anymore. The tray, which had been in his hands all this time, lands neatly on the table. The young man helpfully talks about the sweets he brought. Smiling, he says that children like this. On the plate lies a pink candy, similar to marshmallow, cut into small cubes. The girl is 20 years old and an adult, so this attitude has a bad effect on her reputation. There's nothing left to do but ask what the problem is. Guile is not going to spoil anything, because he was just thinking about God when he saw the caramel. Although even in some ways he is right, since, not counting Opilia's child, the blonde is the youngest here. As you know, Cassius is also quite young, because he is only 25 years old. He's not much older than Urania, but still. Lena, in turn, despite her appearance, is already 29. She looks quite young, so you might think that she is 20, but no. Obviously, all the servants are older than the mistress, because they are hired only after 20 years. This is not sad news. An unexpected question appears in your head, and then leaves your tongue literally in a split second. The girl asks how old Gailey is. Deciding not to contradict and answer immediately, the butler silently looks to the side, and then says that he is 39 years old. The hand weakens, thereby allowing the spoon to fall out of the palm. Perhaps, after all, surprise had such an effect on the beauty because she did not expect this. A beautiful spoon ends up on the floor, waiting for someone to pick it up, since the owner has dropped the item. The eyes widen, and the voice fills with horror. The girl really thought that the servant was not much older than her, and that's why she behaved this way. She could think whatever she wanted, and think that he was between 20 and 30 years old, but not nearly 40. Trying to show ethics in communication, the beauty puts her palm to her mouth, clearing her throat. She is interested in the secret of the butler's youth. A crazy thought comes to mind. But is it really all because of a hobby? This cannot be, because this is nonsense, but who knows? The guy tries to change the subject by asking what he was ordered to do with Thalia. The girl immediately understands that the conversation on the topic is closed, which means she needs to continue talking about something else. Smiling, the blonde claims that everything is fine, and therefore it's worth holding off for now until the investigation is over. Agreeing with the Duchess's answers, the young man is about to turn around, but a voice interrupts. The blonde asks if her husband did anything to her. A slightly relaxed tone helps to calm down, and Guile says that this did not happen because the man completely entrusted the matter to his betrothed. It seems that Cass does not want to worry Urania and is trying to take care of her health and well-being as much as possible. This man certainly cannot worry the young lady, because just his glance makes the blood run cold. Standing up abruptly and pushing back her chair, the girl notices that she urgently needs to meet with Thalia. More information never hurts. Turning around and heading towards the exit, the Duchess is almost disappearing behind the door, but the servant's voice stops her. He wonders if she will let the woman out. Compared to the Duke, the blonde looks much kinder, and this is one of her most important advantages. The eastern tower is illuminated by the sun, but at the same time, a strange, unpleasant feeling hovers everywhere around. The lady confidently heads towards the entrance, while the guy walking behind asks again and again whether the person really intended to go there. He doesn't want bad consequences, because if something happens, the heads of the guards and servants will roll. Everyone will feel bad. Stopping, but only for a minute, the beauty gives people a cold look, declaring that he is exaggerating. This can't be reality. Guile still won't back down, trying to resist. The Duke personally made it clear that the safety of Euclid is everyone's personal responsibility, and there is no choice about it. Sadness, for obvious reasons, falls on the girl. It looks like now she can't go anywhere alone. Bowing her head and holding the hem of her dress with her hands, the sullen blonde walks up the stairs. She shouldn't behave this way, but she has no choice. It is quite difficult to control emotions, especially one-on-one with this nasty ladder. I can't believe she has to climb it again. Perhaps the girl is still weak, or it's just a slippery staircase, but her leg slides down as if broken. Not even a second passes before the mistress flies down the stairs. But one of the servants, screaming, grabs her shoulders, thereby saving her. Laughing awkwardly, the girl says words of gratitude, because she didn't fall, but still she didn't need anyone's help. I didn't want to admit this. The green-haired guy, who was noticeably nervous, shows with his hand which direction to go. After the incident, the heroine almost fell a couple of times, while literally everyone around her was afraid for the safety of the Duchess. The blonde's body literally flew in different directions, realizing that it was difficult for her to stay on this rise. She is still so proud that it is better not to ask for help. However, this is no longer so important, because it all ended happily, and the beauty managed to reach the dungeon without any bad consequences. Someone behind, but very close, claps his hands. Perhaps this is an honor or a simple coincidence. One of the servants exclaims about how well the lady did. It takes a lot to put yourself in such a position and do everything in the best possible way. The girl, realizing that she would soon explode, was almost shaking. It seems like the guards are just collectively bullying her without any right to do so. Smiling a faint smile, the girl asks if this is all arranged on purpose, although this is obvious even to a small child. Everyone present is trying to pretend that nothing happened. It seemed to everyone that this was why they decided to make such a dubious compliment. Rising further and approaching the imprisonment room itself, Thalia's loose hair can be seen even from afar. She sits looking at the floor. Reflections consume the blonde. Because of her parents, the maid took the path of evil, but initially she was not so strange and evil. Even despite all these factors, the maid did a lot of nasty things, and the Duchess managed to really suffer because of her. No longer in thoughts, coming very close, the lady asks in a quiet voice how she's doing here, being in captivity. A tired look rises to the beauty while she continues her tirade. Thalia has to live in dust and dirt and drink dirty water. Hands shake, and then helplessly clutch at the dilapidated iron bars. A hoarse voice calls the interlocutor's name, trying to convince her of something. Dropping to her knees again, the woman begins to cry and beg for forgiveness. She screams something about how she was forced, and she didn't want to do it. A proud, cold gaze drills into the girl, trying not to give herself away. The blonde sighs and then asks who did it. The second time it becomes more strict. Answers are needed to find out who is responsible for all this, but the answer is not coming out as expected. Euclid does not hesitate long and mentions Gerard. Perhaps it was the same man, and it was all his doing, because that was a good theory. As if there were no bars, Rennie leans even closer to see the regret in the eyes of the maid, who stops crying and now silently looks somewhere to the side with horror. If this girl is holding on for the sake of something or someone, then it's time to break her. This will benefit the investigation and will obviously speed things up. The Duchess knows exactly how to do this, so lowering her voice half a tone, she orders the prisoner to be released. Coming out into the world, the woman cannot believe that this is all happening to her. There are too many events that are clearly unexpected. Squinting her eyes, Thalia covers her face with her palm. Bright and unusual. This makes you want to run away to the other side of the world, back into the darkness. The blonde, without even turning to her interlocutor, orders her to take a bath first, and then they can talk over a cup of tea. Trying not to cry, the maid mumbles something. She will never forget the kindness of her hostess, and now this is not discussed. The eyes narrow, realizing that this is all fake. This can hardly be called kindness, even if it is considered such. Urania will never be able to forget the stench of dirty water and floor rags, and how servants walked freely during bathing. While in the castle, the lady gives orders to the young man. He is obliged to guard the bathroom and will never allow her to escape if such attempts are made. The lady is no longer interested in Thalia's condition. She just has to wait until the notification comes that the maid is ready to talk. A passing housewife gives reasons to stare. Already, half the servants are aware of everything that is happening, and some of them do not understand it. The maid, with her head down, does not dare say a word. Now control is not on her side, and therefore she is not subject to this. A procession of 6 people moves further through the castle. 2 servants hold the prisoner's hands to prevent her from attempting to escape. The woman was indeed wrong. It's too early to think that this is kindness, because Rennie is vindictive and doesn't forgive easily. The neck itches, and the legs leave red marks that do not heal. The mouth opens in a silent cry of pain. The eyes widen as Thalia herself curses the mistress. She shouldn't be trusted and should have been on alert. Perhaps the person wants to take revenge and force him to wash in the slop. The body itches literally everywhere, and the unpleasant sensations make you shudder. Less than 5 minutes had passed before the council, consisting of Ophelia and Lena, decided what had happened. The maid ran out naked as soon as she saw the bathroom and yelled something about the slop. A slight note of surprise is reflected on the beauty's face. It was unclear what such a terrible thing happened to her there in prison. Urania's plans included a conversation with the prisoner, but it seems that she is completely incapable of doing so right now. Sighing, the girl orders the girl to be allowed to come to her senses. So many questions and so few answers. Not the best situation to be in right now, but not the worst either. It's midday outside the window. The sun is shining mercilessly because it's already late summer. I would like to curtain all the windows and never go out, but this is not the best solution. Holding a cup of tea in her hands, the girl is immersed in her thoughts. Gerard clearly used Thalia and brought her to this state, and accordingly to the dungeon. Unfortunately, the lady does not have the right to question the guards of Euclid, even if she really needs it. As the law says, the Duchess can only handle the internal affairs of the estate, and she simply does not have the right to do more. The Duke, in turn, is subject to all control. Cassius has the right to command and speak with the Order of Knights. Out of nowhere, Guile appears again. He bends down, announcing that the designers from the studio have finally arrived. This long-awaited meeting. The order that they need to be let in was carried out with lightning speed. A huge number of dresses hung in a row, one after another, appear in the room. The room is no longer empty, because it is all filled with accessories. A huge full-length mirror is also here for the convenience of trying on clothes. The heroine's mouth opens in surprise. She couldn't even dream of such a number of things even in her best dreams. And this is not a joke. 2 beautiful girls appear in front of the blonde and begin to introduce themselves, wishing good morning. The shorter one is Sasha, and the brunette is her assistant, Mina. Smiling, Urania also introduces herself, saying how glad she is to meet you and that they should take care of her. Trying to wave her arms in protest, the pink-haired girl suddenly says that she shouldn't introduce herself like that. Deciding not to contradict in order to speed up the situation, the Duchess agrees and continues to remain silent, so as not to spoil her reputation even more. The girls seemed to be greatly impressed. They did not know that the mistress of the estate was such a beautiful and pleasant woman. Taking a break from the conversation, Sasha goes up to the hanger and points at the clothes, offering to demonstrate already completed outfits that can be tried on. Bowing her head in agreement, Rennie asks to see the best of the proposed options. There is very little left before the holiday, and nothing is ready in the kingdom. It was worth reaching an agreement with the most prestigious studio in the capital, but they were overwhelmed with orders. The best solution turned out to be to call Alexandra, who owns a sewing workshop on the edge of the capital. They're not particularly popular for the brightness of their dresses, but that's for the best. There is no specific dress code at the event, and this is to the advantage of the young lady. She won't have to struggle to find a discreet dress for a hike. The pink-haired lady leads the Duchess to the mirror, which reveals a beautiful reflection in a white, open dress. A slight smile lights up the faces of friends. Sasha continues to spin around, talking about how wonderful the hostess is. She herself couldn't believe that this could happen. Not even a minute passes before the assistant appears with a blue cloth. The girl, in turn, offers to try on another dress. Then everything started spinning like a non-stop whirlwind. The dresser's eyes shone while she offered another dress, but in a different color. Hands reach out to the blonde, bringing her a fabric that doesn't fit at all, but she has to try it on. The Duchess is ready to run away, but Alexandra, who is looking for everything, is able to get anyone, having a wonderful sense of manifestation. Sitting in a dress that seems to be too tight, Urania suggests taking a break and drinking tea. She urgently needs air. Lena, who has been nearby all this time, carefully puts her hand on her shoulder and then screams in surprise. Waving her arms, the maid gives orders. She urgently needed water, and this is not discussed. The lady is probably feeling bad, and this is much more important than anything else. Grabbing her friend's wrist, the brunette notices how tense the girl is, which means the dress is too heavy for her still fragile body. A pink-haired beauty appears out of nowhere, laughing a little. After all, this is impossible, since their dresses are the lightest in the city. The girl still doesn't leave her owner's side, trying to calm her down with her touches. It didn't have much effect, but it wasn't entirely bad either. The tired voice of a blonde cuts through, asking to find and bring here a servant who would look like a young lady. Immediately jumping up, the beauty assures that everything will be done in the best possible way. After all, you can rely on it without unnecessary thought. Then the funnel with dresses began again. The worker showed a dozen more dresses, asking her opinion. It's better not to know that an item is bought only for one publication. If a lady were asked what she wanted, she would definitely not include clothes in this list. All these robes are exactly the same, so in fact, there is nothing to choose from. Deciding to consult, the mistress carefully bows her head and begins to whisper something in her friend's ear. This is her first time choosing a dress, and it is not an easy task. Lena rolls her eyes, trying to accept reality. Usually my mother bought all the clothes, or I had to wear my sister's clothes because she grew faster. Trying not to smile stupidly, the acquaintance insists that from now on, Urania goes shopping and shopping. Perhaps this could help, so the girl without another thought nods her head in agreement. The main character should definitely start living in a new way. You can't hold on to the past, but this present is extremely strange. The maid calls the lady by name. The girl's cheeks instantly turn red. The item shown was clearly not what the person expected to see in the heat of the day. The beauty is holding a nightie in her hands, which is quite open. It seems that it looks more like some kind of scrap of fabric than a decent garment. Covering his eyes with his hands, the question is on the tip of his tongue. This is some kind of monstrosity, and the heroine definitely needs to find out why she needs it. By setting boundaries, the woman is trying to explain that this is not an ugliness at all, but a completely good thing. To get close to the Duke, young people must try and spend the first night in the best possible way. Even the smallest details should not be overlooked. Confusion and surprise are the only things felt at the moment. It's even difficult for a girl to talk about this in front of anyone else. Lena seems to be quite belligerent. She continues her conversation by mentioning that it is better to change your nightie every day to make a good impression. The maid seemed, at first glance, to be completely out of her mind. Approaching the mannequin, she begins to imitate Cassius's behavior. The gaze switches somewhere to the side, and the lady remembers something of her own. Words about the first night bring their own memories and moments. That very day when the servants whispered to each other, nobody showed any respect, not even an ounce at all, trying to mock. The young woman was sitting in bed all alone. This is that same miserable time that I didn't want to remember at all, even if I wanted to. Dark night fell on the estate. The mountains were visible, but even they were covered in pitch darkness. There are only 2 people in the room. Guile obligingly bows, and then notifies that the connection has been established and the conversation can now be carried on. The Duchess is full of determination. She should have done this a long time ago, but she never had the opportunity, and now it's very beneficial. Cassius appears to be sitting directly opposite. The look of his amethyst eyes is quite penetrating and reaches even from the other end of the line, in another city. A small ball is spinning right next to the girl's face, waiting for someone to talk to it. Both people sit in complete silence, not daring to utter a word. Hands in open-work gloves are slightly clenched into fists. It's not so bad, because at least we managed to establish a connection. You just have to pull yourself together and tell everything. She can't stand it anymore, and she needs to solve this somehow. Young people start talking at the same moment. The man asks about his beloved's well-being, while the blonde voices her desire to talk about something. There's no stuttering, but the servants, standing only 2 meters from the sofa, are quite in the way. They seem to be deliberately trying to eavesdrop on the conversation. Rennie's face is distorted by a strange grimace of thoughtfulness. Lately, my husband has been very worried about his health, as if she was made of sand and is about to fall apart. It is difficult to understand what is the reason for this behavior. We need to find out, but at this stage, the conversation should be about a completely different topic. Remembering her first attempt to ask for a divorce, the young lady thinks about the strangeness of the Duke's behavior that evening. Perhaps the girl is just fooling herself, but judging by the reaction of the servants standing behind, this is not all false, and Cass really cares too much about her. Trying to remain calm, the beauty asks one more question. Perhaps there will be such a privilege, and 2 men will leave the hall. Without even allowing him to finish, the guy abruptly cuts off his wife. According to him, this is impossible, which means both young men will remain in the room. Keeping calm becomes much more difficult from time to time. Exhaling air through her mouth, the heroine asks what the reason is. The answer does not take long to arrive. They have a duty and are responsible for the safety of the Duchess. If even one hair falls from Urania's head, they will answer for it with their lives. Without lingering for another minute, Euclid apologizes, saying that time is coming to an end and it's time for him to go. But before leaving, he asks to take care of himself. I don't want to admit it, but the conversation turned out to be quite strange. The eyes widen while the guys behind are literally crying with frustration. A strange feeling comes over your head. It is impossible to understand what exactly it brings, but it is absolutely impossible to refuse it. Morning has long visited the palace, bringing with it the sun, which brightly illuminates the beautiful garden. The snacks on the table only complete the picture. Urania tries not to talk to anyone. She needs to think about everything that's happening and maybe adjust her plan a little. The girls behind them crowded together, asking the most obvious questions. They wonder if the lady likes the tea or the dress. You can easily do without such things. A funny thing is happening. The attitude of those who only recently mocked the poor woman has changed so dramatically. Ophelia literally came out of the ground. She goes a little deeper into the hall, asking if she was called. A joyful smile lights up the Duchess's face, and everything around her, too. Exclaiming the maid's name, the girl sincerely rejoices at this outcome of events. Rising from her seat, the blonde straightens up and then orders everyone to leave. The only ones allowed to stay are Lena and Ophelia. Surely rumors will soon spread that the Duchess is kicking out all the servants, except for 2 incomprehensible people. It's not the most important thing, and it won't hurt at all, but it will become obvious that Rennie only trusts certain people. Trying to keep the conversation going, the beauty asks about the maid's child. There is no need to hide the fact that she really is not indifferent to their fate. Bowing and closing her eyes, the brunette thanks, saying that everything is fine. All this might not have happened, but it turned out for the best. The girl did not want much, because all she wanted was the trust of the servants in this estate. No one else bullied her, but no one trusted her either. Loyalty should be an absolute character trait, so much so that serving the master should be the goal of one's whole life. Unexpected words escape Euclid's lips. Ophelia is put in charge of all the maids in the castle. Trying to object, the maid does not understand how this will happen and how she can even dare to do such things. This isn't exactly a good thing. The best move is to take it weakly. The beauty, closing her eyes, says that this is her personal assignment. The work is not too difficult, but is it too much for a brunette? When the girl could not speak or see, everything was different. Now she is a nominal duchess and has the right to make her own decisions. The interlocutor's fist slowly clenches. The hand has not yet turned red, but the mood shows clear determination. Furrowing her brows, Ophelia almost screams. The mistress can count on her. She will have to perform her duties in the best possible way. Rejoicing at her such quick success, the blonde does not understand how she managed it. In the future, she really hopes for the help of her ally. If someone disagrees with this decision, the girl has the right to punish him. The mistress's orders cannot be appealed, so be it. The heat from the scorching sun continues. I can't believe that there is at least some air around. Carefully bringing the cup to her lips, the girl notices that the drink is warm. Lena really cares too much about her mistress. If you think about it this way, it's still good. There is no choice anyway, so the Duchess starts drinking from a mug. This is no longer entirely funny and pleasing, but my hands are shaking as if a tremor is starting. At any moment, there is a risk of dropping the cup. Looking at her palm, the girl realizes that the symptoms are getting worse. You urgently need to attend the party and find a doctor. We need to heal completely before Cassius finds out about anything. I clearly didn't want to think about the consequences for the 100th time that day. The party will take place today, and the doctor will definitely be there. Said promise to do everything in the best possible way. The same royal carriage rushes along the path. Someone's confused voice clarifies whether everything will definitely be fine, while the mistress assures Lena that she has nothing to be afraid of. The woman is dressed as a man, but she is very worried, and it is noticeable. She doesn't think at all about if she is suddenly discovered, because it will be much worse if everything is reported to the Duke. The lady continues to try to calm her companion. If no one reports anything, then he won't find out, and the whole path is absolutely free. Memories are carried back to a few days ago, when, sitting on an armchair, the beauty read Giles' stories about servants who are important assistants to the demon of war. Running up to the girl, the man shouts something, pulling out the notebook and trying to explain himself as quickly as possible. Urania behaved quite normally, trying not to react, but at the same time subduing the butler with just blackmail. Trying to play as good a fairy from Wonderland as possible, the lady promised that in exchange for help, she would not tell anyone about books of an erotic nature. Almost through tears, the guy agrees to anything, so long as no one finds out about what he does in his free time. A sparsely populated outskirts of the capital, one of the most abandoned places. Not many people decide to do everything in the best possible way and get there. You shouldn't come to the party in the Duke's carriage, which is why Sade found the necessary and affordable carriage. The couple reached their destination quite quickly, as it did not take more than 15 minutes. Thoughts switched to the magical portal, but then the servants and Cassius appeared in the distance. The man is busy with something and does not pay much attention to the girl who has just arrived in a carriage. However, not even a minute passes before the young man's eyes enlarge and become more like pennies. He didn't expect such a surprise. The rhinestone takes possession of the heroine's mind, and the brain quickly begins to work, looking for an excuse. It is completely unclear where Cass is here from. The young man's face literally turned purple with anger. He couldn't believe that all this was now happening to him, and no one else. You just need to calm down and pull yourself together. A good plan has already been found in case of such an unexpected meeting. Nothing comes of it, as the menacing look immediately makes you forget about everything in the world. Lifting the hem of her dress, the beauty decides to climb back into the carriage. Before she can even step 1 foot inside, a voice from behind calls out to her. The question that interests the Duke is, "So, what is the lady doing in the capital?" The man, like a panther in no time, finds himself very close to his wife. He needs answers, and preferably quickly. Unable to bear such a distance, the girl tries to back away. This is too close and unbearably strange. The first words come out of your mouth, and this is the simplest reason. The blonde came to see the guy, because even on her route there is a townhouse. Her eyes dart up and down, but trying not to remain silent for more than 1 minute, the girl asks in a belligerent tone what happened, because perhaps she is not welcome here. Without saying a word, Cassius simply continues to stare at his interlocutor. He has something to say, but something else is diverting his attention. The Duchess is very beautifully dressed. A scarlet dress, which is moderately open, but at the same time quite cute, stones on top, and such innocent eyes, which are clearly included in the set. Euclid assures that she is being cunning, since such attire was not worn to meet her husband. Turning her head away, the heroine notices that the young man clearly did not like the outfit. Looking herself up and down, Rennie doesn't understand what the problem is. She thought the dress was beautiful, especially since everyone was complimenting her. The guy changes the subject, talking about the danger of being here, so he asks to go to the townhouse, to which he is refused. Asking again, the Duke clearly drew conclusions for himself, because his betrothed did not come to him. She has some kind of meeting. Raising her index finger, the heroine tries to argue. She was on her way to a party, but decided to stop to meet Euclid. The guy's gaze changed at the speed of light. He asked if it was really a party dress. Confirming the words of her interlocutor, the girl tells how she will be able to emphasize her status and integrate into society. Asking not to worry, the beauty talks about her escort, who is a reliable person and will help at any time. Excitement filled my mind, preventing me from thinking rationally. Euclid asked again about what would happen if he was not around. Freezing for just a few seconds, the girl exhales and then recommends not to worry and just mind your own business. Turning his head towards the carriage, the man sharply asks if the maid dressing up as a guy is part of the party. Grinning, Cass notes that perhaps it's just a strange hobby of hers that he didn't know about. After turning back to his beloved, he continues his stream of sarcasm, noting that perhaps this is the Duchess's passion. Deciding to calmly explain the situation, Urania says that she asked Lena to change clothes, since there is no other man in mind. As if not understanding the first time, the Duke asks again and clarifies whether she has any other partner. It looks strange. The young people silently continue to stand and look at each other, not considering it necessary to say anything. The Duchess closes her eyes and decides that it is now her turn to mock. She once again confirms her guesses, noting that now it seems that Cass has health problems. The rumor has already suffered, but what will happen next? After a few seconds of such an awkward moment, the horse appears along with a servant, who considers it necessary to notify about the discovery of traces of persecution. Surprise knows no bounds, because the beauty did not expect that after the check, someone would follow her. The interlocutor turns towards the young man, trying to remain calm and not start shouting or reading his morals. Inhaling and exhaling, the guy is not entirely aware of what is happening, but decides that the best option would be to simply turn to his wife. It looks like someone was trying to attack, so you should be a lot more careful. The guards should be located next to the carriage or even inside. Lena's head appears from the cart, and then her whole body. The maid blinks her eyes in surprise, ready to come to the aid of her friend. Trying not to fall on her side or to the ground, the girl carefully grabs the maid's hand in the hope of help. Being around Cassius all the time, these trips did not lead to anything good. When you are with him, your heart always beats faster than usual, and because of this, your strength disappears. Already sitting on the soft seats in the carriage, the brunette continues to ask about the well-being of the mistress, to which she simply shrugs it off. Changing the topic of conversation, the blonde suggests forgetting everything and finally going to this party. The fox mask ends up first in the hands, and then on the face of the main character. This is the same distinctive sign that helps to camouflage. Even then, when friends were writing to each other about the masquerade, Ced wondered why the girl thought that they simply did not recognize each other with masks on their faces. Rennie shouldn't talk nonsense, because a friend will recognize an acquaintance even if the face is completely under the mask, and this will be one of the easiest tasks. It is worth thinking and remembering about the outstanding hair color. This shade affects only 1 in 10,000 inhabitants of the Empire. Sometimes even the patience of the all-forgiving Urania runs out. You need to overcome yourself and finish reading the message. Callisto, although sometimes still wanted to stop his eternal bullying, even this time he fell silent, now talking seriously about solving the problem. For peace of mind, the beauty should wear a white fox mask, while Callisto will wear a black cat mask. The entrance to the party was quite heavily guarded, because there were several servants standing there who checked everything exactly. The blonde asks to see the invitation. In order not to create personal problems and delays in the queue, the Duchess hands a piece of paper into the hands of the inspector. If you present this invitation, no one will check your identity and you will be able to enter immediately. Not even a few minutes have passed before the fox in a graceful finger and her humble servant appear on the threshold. They clearly don't know where to start or what to take on. Literally blurring with worry, Lena says that she is very afraid of somehow slipping up and ruining everything. She then ordered not to worry, but in the end, she herself is nervous, so much so that she will soon begin to shake all over. I had never attended an event of this magnitude before. The girl managed to make her debut only when Elika, taking her hand, took her away and left her to do her own thing at that event. All their lives, father and mother tried to do everything to attract attention. Social life is one of the most important points. Even at the banquet held in honor of the wedding, all the glory went to the younger ones, and all because Urania did not know how to communicate with people at all. Considering all these details, it's still strange how the girls agreed to come here. The only hope that remains is that everything will go well. Without thinking twice, the friends enter the hall through the open doors. I can't believe that they are finally there, so it's worth taking another look around. Trying not to show it, the mistress tries to smile, even if the smile comes out rather nervous and constrained. A little embarrassed, the blonde asks not to open her mouth in the presence of others, because it will be better. They assured Lena that everything was fine, only to drag her here. An unexpected question came from the brunette. She suddenly wondered what they were doing at the auction party. Usually, at such events, the first thing, as the most important thing, was an illegal auction, where illegal things were sold. Another one of the most important was the exchange of confidential information, exactly the one that cannot be disclosed to anyone. As far as the heroine knows, in such places men and women sleep with just anyone. This is not the best detail, but the girl cannot tell the maid. Clearly nervous, Rennie tries to explain herself. According to her, there is just an auction and other fun events going on here. It's clear from the companion's face that she doesn't really believe. Grabbing her friend's shoulder with her hand, the heroine realizes that she has messed up, having forgotten what is happening here. But this is not a reason to leave. The young couple, trying not to show how bad everything is, carefully follows into the depths of the hall. Various people in dark masks wander around the room every now and then. They all seem to be wondering who came, so they stare, even though this is not true. Two girls try to scout out the situation as quietly as possible. You should not show your face, even if it is wearing a brand new closed mask. Sed is still nowhere to be seen. It's very interesting where he is and whether he came. The nightcat seems to have disappeared. Thinking, the girl understands that she needs to think like her old friend. He has his own quirks. Turning her head, Urania tries to look around. The eyes slowly widen because the prey has been found. Callisto in a dark mask is spinning on the arm of some maiden. His trajectory is almost the entire hall, and he is clearly enjoying it. At this time, Lena slowly follows behind, but a waiter constantly appears on her way, offering champagne. The guy seems to have completely gotten the hang of it, because he rather briskly grabs the glass, trying to drink the contents. Taking the liquid, the lady notices that she still cannot drink this here. This is not the best idea. Leaning over her friend's ear, Rennie says that she will leave her for a very short time. There is one unfinished business that involves Said. The maid's face betrays strong doubt, and this is obvious. She is not sure that the mistress should go all alone after surveillance. Smiling, as if assuring that everything will be fine, the blonde talks about her friend's personal security, which, if anything happens, will take care of her. Walking around the hall, the beauty gives instructions. If she doesn't arrive in an hour, then you should go to the carriage and wait for her there. Once again, trying to hide her nervousness, the lady once again asks Lena not to talk to anyone. Sed peers into the distance, noticing a silhouette in a red dress and realizing that this is most likely his companion, who is already waiting. Approaching a little, the blonde folds her hands in a pose that shows with all her appearance that she is uncomfortable. The young couple is at the very end of the room, but something is alarming. Turning around, the Duchess notices that she feels someone's gaze on her. The brunette calls out to his friend, asking her to follow him so as not to waste time. She understands why this is being done. It's impossible to confuse, but most likely the lady just imagined it. Paranoia exists in all people to some degree, so the best thing to do is just calm down. Friends silently continue their procession. They have almost arrived at their destination. Already near the treasured door, the girl suddenly notices that she had not noticed such a frantic crowd before. It's really strange why there are so many people here. They're like the sea. They float and float, gathering in one place. The thought process is interrupted by none other than Callisto. He points to the side, saying that his room is there. It is in that room that all transactions take place. In it, the guy was given information about the doctor Urania, but she is interested in finding out at least what kind of person he is. Realizing that it is really important for the Duchess to know, Ced decides not to hesitate, and knows that this is the wife of the White Eagle who threw today's party. Phoebe Lillian is a fairly famous person in the Empire. You can't ignore her, because everyone knows about her abilities. As he opens up to his girlfriend, the man complains about how he went out of his way to find a wonderful doctor for a wonderful woman. She no longer has the strength to incite her friend, so the heroine promises to reward him generously as soon as the treatment is successfully completed. Bowing his head as if giving respect, the guy rejoices at this outcome of events. Approaching one of the servants, the young man asks him to tell him that Callisto has arrived and is waiting at the entrance. Apparently he is known here, but this does not help stop the nervousness of the beauty, who does not know what to expect. Standing in front of a woman, the lady tries to ask for help as politely as possible. She found it with the help of the guild. A beautiful woman in an excellent dress sits directly opposite. The look is a little tired, but work probably won't wait. The young man said goodbye right in front of the office. Wishing him luck, he assures that he will need it, because persuading such a doctor is not easy. Putting his fingers to his forehead, he salutes, saying that it is time to continue his service. It's like he has no choice. Phoebe announces 2 rules. Even if the girl was brought by a trusted person, under no circumstances should you take off your mask and talk about your personality. Surprise freezes on the Duchess's face. However, for a long time, she does not think about why everything happens this way. Looking away, she realizes that this is quite logical, since today is a masquerade, and the interlocutor's husband is hosting it. The conversation continues as Lillian asks what they can offer her in return for her help. The hand takes out a dark bag, which probably contains pleasant contents. The lady opposite doesn't understand. Smiling, the beauty holds out the little thing, asking if this is enough. She doesn't want to push on. It's worth trying to find a common language. Phoebe's eyes drop somewhere down, examining and evaluating the pouch. Surely it matters how valuable the content is. The silence is too heavy on the ears, so the blonde begins to get very nervous. I can't believe this won't be enough. Another exactly the same bag falls on the table. I want everything to go in the best possible way, because the doctor is an important link in Urania's plan. Trying to ask for at least a hint about the price, the maiden suggests that Lillian's services cost much more than she offered. Exhaling air, the interlocutor states that she is not particularly interested in money, otherwise she would not be treating people, but would be chasing banknotes. Confusion is clearly reflected on the face. Ced was right. It wouldn't be easy at all, and you could spend hours persuading him. A good thought comes to mind. Perhaps if you demonstrate your strength and thereby somehow prove your importance, everything will work out. The hand falls and clasps the wrist with almost weightless movements. The bracelet is waiting to be pressed to release the power. The woman is a doctor, which means she might be interested in Urania's abilities. No one promises victory, but it's worth trying to take part. At first, the girl always walked around confused because she didn't know what was happening. But now she understands what this black shadow is around people. The dark manifestation could be in completely different places. The connection has never been made. If you concentrate, the heroine manages to see even the smallest manifestations of shadows, that is, illness. The Duchess's eyes snap open. Power flows inside the veins, making it clear that everything around is now subject to it. Switching her gaze to the man in the hood, the girl clarifies whether he also came to get help from the doctor. Bowing her head, Phoebe responds by saying no. According to her, he is completely healthy, but came to get checked. The shadow near the man's head is quite thick. He can't be okay, so there's no certainty. Perhaps the person is hiding the fact that he is sick or does not know anything at all. It is strange that those present did not notice this. Putting a finger to his mouth, Rennie asks what if the lady made a mistake and he still needs help. Lillian calmly denies, because she examined this patient yesterday and no symptoms were detected. She wants to know what the assumption is based on. Trying not to sound as crazy as possible, the blonde talks about how when something is wrong with a person, she sees the sore spot. Perhaps this is unfortunately, but the heroine can also see her illnesses, even if she doesn't want to. Agreeing, the woman says it's possible they didn't find anything because the disease only recently appeared. This is hard to believe, but it sounds quite interesting. Still, it would not be logical to take the word of some strange girl. You just have to carry out a new inspection, and then everyone around you will see for themselves. Phoebe's students, one interrupting the other, scream about fraud because the girl showed up at the party, wasting time and doubting the qualifications of the doctor. The girl bows her head, realizing that she is speaking the absolute truth. She has nothing to be ashamed of, and there is no need to kick her out, because you can just see for yourself. The maids in the background continue to shout that the beauty who has come is crazy, but Lillian has a completely different opinion. The voice asks to come closer, so Urania's face instantly lights up with a joyful fire. The hands still take the bag and place it in the doctor's palm. She should accept at least a partial payment. Smiling, the interlocutor declares that she will accept the gold, at least as a sign that she has done a good job. It's incredible, but it looks like the most difficult person on Earth just agreed to a deal, and now everything will be fine. Bending over the mistress's ear, the fox knows the location of the pain, somewhere on the back of the head and next to the ear. And apparently, everything is quite serious. Switching her gaze, the woman clarifies, asking again whether the person is ready to bear responsibility if she makes a mistake. Rennie has no problem agreeing. She is ready because she is absolutely confident in her abilities. It won't be difficult for Phoebe to figure out whether the Duchess is telling the truth or not. But if she is, she's simply talking about the help she really needs. Lillian has no choice but to nod silently. She really hopes that this is all true, because she also wants to help. Calling one of the servants, the mistress asks Janie to bring paper and a pen to fill out the form. The doctor asks you to fill out a form and write down your address so that you can contact him later when everything is checked. The letter is complete, and the only remaining request is that Phoebe not write her name on the envelope immediately after sending it. The estate had a rather beautiful, extensive garden and a huge number of flowers. This is unthinkable and extremely wonderful. The lady holding the hem of her dress goes out into the street, constantly looking around. Finally, all this is over and the face can be free. Urania takes off her fox mask and takes a deep breath. The girl asked to wait in the carriage, but if the maid was there, then all she had to do was wait. The not very pleasant thing was the strange sound. A strange cart, covered with thick fabric, stands just a few meters away. The sounds don't stop, and it's starting to get a little scary. The heroine's face literally stretches out of fear. My shoulders begin to shake a little, because everything that is happening will not subside. Trying to remain calm, she seems to be asking herself what is going on there. A second later, he feels the impact of a sound wave, or a real one, and Rennie is abruptly thrown aside from everything that is happening, not giving him a chance to escape. A huge monster crawls onto the road. One head looks more like a mythical goat, and the other like a snake. Teeth measuring under a meter inspire confidence. Fear increasingly envelops the beauty's insides. Where could this beast come from if no one destroyed the artifact and released them? Her thoughts quickly turn to the whistle she was given for self-defense. It's worth at least trying before it's too late. Determination knows no bounds. There's no choice because I want to live much more. Drawing more air into her mouth, the girl applies the little thing and then blows with all her might, hoping for outside help. A new wave takes over the entire body. Because of the wind, nothing can be heard. But the monster is getting closer and closer despite the distance. We urgently need to pull ourselves together and try again. Only such thoughts haunt Rennie, because if you don't try, you'll never know. The mouth is already opening to pounce. It looks too ominous, since no one expected the death to come so quickly. I want to close my eyes and not think about anything else. I want to forget about everything in this world. But out of nowhere, a man in a black cloak appears. The thing moves in the wind, while a sharp sword cuts off the head of the monster, who was already closer than a meter from the Duchess. By the hair and facial features, one could understand who exactly came to save the girl. Surprised eyes widen even more, while the beauty is quietly surprised because she did not expect to see the Duke right here and now. Finishing the job, the guy turns around, starting to read the moral. According to him, perhaps this is how Urania expresses her protest against the refusal to get a divorce. Sighing, the young man notes that he will soon go so crazy, but no one listens to him anymore. The blonde asks why he is here if he has business to do. Putting the saber back into the holster in his bosom, the man looks wearily to the side. It's pretty logical why he ended up here. Slightly not understanding what is happening, the girl tries to comprehend and digest the words that have just been spoken. Changing the subject, the guy says that what's more important now is that his wife hates him so much that she won't even let him touch her toes. Squinting as if not understanding what kind of insanity this is, the Duchess wonders what kind of nonsense her interlocutor is talking about. Both have absolutely nothing to say. They don't understand what the problem is with each other, because everything is much simpler than it seems. Trying to be the first to start a conversation, the beauty still asks how the man ended up here. As if ignoring the question, the guy asks how his wife ended up at the party, although she didn't tell him anything. Looking down, Urania mentions Side, who invited her a long time ago, and she could not refuse her old acquaintance. The Duke can't help but seem overly sad. He even looks a little unhappy, considering that nothing bad or terrible happened. According to him, the girl is playing with his feelings. I can't believe that a person in the full dawn of his strength is able to say such a thing. In this case, everything is just the opposite. Again, starting the same topic, the young lady folds her hands, apologizing and saying that the Duke's honor will not be spoiled because the promise not to do this has already been made. Asking again, the young man tries to believe in everything that is happening. The husband came here only because he was worried that she would stain his family. A menacing voice makes it clear that the jokes are over. Honor is given to this man by birthright, and he certainly does not look like someone whose dignity can be taken away or denigrated. The girl recoiled in surprise. She couldn't believe that all this was happening for a completely different reason. Trying not to appear even more strange, Cassius leans down to be on the same level as the woman. The eyes seemed to flash thunder and lightning, while the guy said that the interlocutor, like the honor, belonged only to him. Narrowing her eyes, the heroine is indignant because she is not a thing to belong to anyone. She is her own boss. Leaning even closer to his betrothed's face, Cass threateningly repeats his tirade. The couple vowed to each other to always be together and not break it. Mild disgust can be read simply by emotions. The Duchess did not understand what he was talking about. Something else happens at exactly the wrong time. The man's gaze switches to the lady's feet, and then he notices the shoe that has slipped off. The guy squats down, picking up a beautiful shoe from the ground. He should do what he started. Without thinking twice, he asks if they will allow him to help put his shoes back on his feet. The desire is out of the ordinary, but who is ideal? Leaning over and looking down, the lady doesn't even know what to say. This was probably discouraging and confusing, but there was still no choice. A hand in a black glove, soft like cotton wool, takes the main character's leg in order to complete what she started. Every day it becomes more and more interesting why my husband behaves this way. It's not like he cares. Continuing to go about his business, at the same time the guy begins to talk about divorce. He really doesn't want to do this, and there's one pretty obvious reason for that. The leg is finally in its place. The shoe fits like a glove, but definitely interrupts the man who was interrupted for a second. The Duke does not want to lose Urania. This is his honest answer, and you can truly believe it. The silent question, like an unbearable weight, insists on the beauty's face. She expected anything, but certainly not such an outcome. Kneeling down and putting his hand to his chest, Cassius asks to let him be hers, even if she cannot or does not want to belong only to him. The man who kneels in front of her so that she believes his intentions. All the moments when it seemed that Euclid strongly hated his wife burst into memories like a whirlwind. He did not allow her to leave the bedroom for safety. I tried to prevent divorce or simply improve my attitude towards myself. Does this really mean that Cass does not hate the Duchess and only wishes the best for her? The disgusting thing was not to the extent that was expected, because everything was completely different. Continuing to kneel, the man asks him to stop thinking about divorce. It seems that Cass seriously considers Rennie his wife and a member of the Euclid family. He doesn't care what she thinks, because it's the honest truth. The Duke stretches out his hands, trying to somehow change everything around him, even if it is not strong. It does work. It is difficult to believe in the sincerity of the words, since the man probably wants to make her his property. This is always the case with aristocrats. Deciding to ask a question, Urania asks again if he really doesn't want to get a divorce, to which he receives ridicule. She didn't seem to listen to Cassius at all. Obviously, getting a divorce will not be easy, which means the only way out is to hide your illness from him until the last moment. The conversation is distracted by someone's voice screaming the Duchess's name at the top of her lungs. Ced hurries towards the couple, who seems absolutely happy, as if nothing had happened, and he happened to be passing here. The heroine seemed about to explode. This impudent person first left her all alone, and then came back as if nothing had happened, and everything was fine. Cass, following the beauty's gaze, understands her indignation, even without knowing the full horror of the situation. Thinking, the husband reveals another genius. It's all because of this man. The blonde wanted a divorce because of him. Forgetting his name, the guy said that the blonde loved this tailed one. This became noticeable a long time ago. The guy's gaze doesn't focus on anything, but it's still worth the wait. The eyes widen in surprise once again. The woman exclaims, trying to understand what kind of nonsense he just said. Almost screaming, the girl exclaims that she couldn't even dream of such a thing in her nightmares, to which she receives an atypical answer. The Duke is happy about this and feels relieved. The girl is even more shocked. She did not expect such a reaction and such a question from the word at all. Already approaching the scene of the incident, Callisto, as if nothing had happened, asks what happened here and why such a pogrom. No longer able to restrain herself, the girl almost begins to scream. She wonders if he doesn't want to say anything else or what. Pretending that everything is fine, said Grins, adding only that he is very good and beautiful. Trying not to hurt the heroine's fragile ego, he asks if she's okay. This is extremely important, even if said jokingly. The blonde comments on the situation, saying that she is only okay thanks to Cass, and then fake thanks for the man leaving her alone. Callisto, it would seem, does not hear anyone, but simply enjoys the weather, blatantly ignoring his interlocutor. Noticing the guy standing next to him, the brunette asks for what purpose he decided to come all this way. The girl's emotions are overflowing because this is unthinkable. Saving face, the young man talks about an illegal auction. He had to check, but maybe someone knows something. Smiling, the friend, trying to maintain ease, suddenly says that the imperial family forbade giving out details. The war with monsters ended a long time ago, but despite this, sometimes people still enter the world through gaps. Not long ago, a decree was issued that monsters must be killed as soon as they are discovered. Selling the creatures is tantamount to treason, and Sade is accused of this, even if he refuses to admit it, because his job is to investigate. The guy shows with all his appearance that he is unpleasant, but he tries to communicate as politely as possible, and this is strange. The most interesting thing is that Callisto agreed at all, because in a past life the Emperor's family was killed. It's also not worth remembering that the blonde was locked in the tower, and the brunette hated Cassius so much that he died trying to kill him. Now everything is different and everything is fine. There's no need to focus on something so unimportant. The Duke shows his disgust with all his might, but says that as a dirty mercenary, he is given dusty work. Callisto has a really good tongue, and therefore now he mentions an important piece of evidence that was destroyed during the battle. Anger overtook his soft features. The guy was outraged that his friend's girlfriend could die, but he didn't even bat an eyelid. Stated that by inviting Urania, he could take care of her himself, but Cass opposed this because nothing happened. The cold tension only grew, and it seemed that these two could freeze with their temperament. Turning their heads, the young people noticed the guards who were quickly approaching the scene. They needed time. The lady abruptly throws it a little to the side, the most unexpected manifestation, but this time she knows exactly what it is from. The gaze switches to the place where Saeed literally just stood, who again disappeared without a trace. Choking and coughing from the stage smoke, the beauty thinks why she couldn't leave like a normal person. Cassius raises his hand and then covers the young lady's body with his cloak. There is no logic in the actions, but I don't care about that. The eyes begin to slowly close on their own. It is not clear why this happened, but a strange tingling sensation is felt throughout the body. Perhaps this is due to the fact that the girl has warmed up, but now she only feels extremely tired. Hugging the beauty's head with her hand, the girl presses herself against the warm body. Cass asks if she's tired, to which the answer is yes. The man offers to carry his beloved, and within a second she finds herself in the arms of the Duke. Holding the lady in his arms, the guy walks forward. They should get to the carriage as quickly as possible, but at the same time not run. Almost falling asleep, the blonde asks if they are angry with her. This seems to be her favorite question now. A surprised voice asks why she got this idea, to which she does not receive a normal answer. It turns out that the young man is thinking about how to punish the knights who were obliged to protect the Duchess. Suddenly perking up, the young lady looks directly into Euclid's eyes, asking if they were here. This is logical because they are ordered to follow everywhere. As she calms down, the girl realizes that she didn't seem to be in the hall then, because it was most likely one of the servants watching her. From now on, we need to be even more careful. Otherwise, all our plans may go down the drain. Arriving at the estate, a man of average build appears right in front of the young people. His name is Venster, and he is the butler of this estate. Still not even thinking about letting the heroine go, the Duke asks where the bedroom is so that he can go there. The man leads the couple to the door, and then helpfully talks about the double bed that was placed in the room for convenience. The girl thinks about something, but only for a moment. This bed is for both of them. As he lowers his wife to the floor, the guy bows, even if it is not obligatory, and then advises him to get some rest. Hope lights up in the eyes, but quickly goes out when the girl asks what will happen next. She immediately understands that her husband is leaving. Confirming Euclid's guesses, the young man says that everything is fine, and if anything happens, you can ask the servants who are here for help. After just a few minutes, the main character is left completely alone in a huge room. Lying on the bed, Urania thinks about her wedding night. Then she, too, was alone in an empty room without people. This is not the most pleasant thing to perceive, but more acceptable moments pop up in my head. The Duke is on one knee, asking the girl to make him hers, because he does not want to lose her under any pretext. Closing her eyes, Rennie realizes that perhaps it was all a lie, because even after those words, she is probably so disgusted with Cassius that he does not want to sleep with her. The bright morning sun is shining on the estate of Duke Euclid. No one has the right to cancel this or spoil the mood. On the table in front of the lady, there is a small bath of water for morning washing. The maid brought it. Wiping her face, the lady apologizes for not allowing her to rest, because she can only trust Lena, to which she receives objections. According to her companion, everything is fine, and this is her duty. The maid's eyes were literally black due to lack of sleep and tears. This could not please, or at least somehow soften the situation. Yesterday, after everything that happened, Lena came running, apologizing, and not stopping crying. She was very sorry. It turned out that when the girl was waiting for the mistress, she was surrounded by strange girls who did not give any way to the poor lady. Squinting a little, the Duchess thinks about giving the maid a vacation. She didn't even think that she would turn out to be such an attractive guy. The notification came, and then a huge box was brought into the room. The Duke deigned to send a gift for his wife. Sighing in surprise, the beauty asked if it was definitely addressed to her, while a friend nearby advised her to quickly put on an outfit. Smiling, the hostess agrees, but only because she is so sincerely asked, and not because this gift is from her betrothed. A dress made of dark corduroy, as if poured into it, lies on the skin in soft layers, allowing you to breathe deeply. It's just wonderful. Adjusting the hem, the woman does not quite understand the essence of everything that is happening, but the attire is truly wonderful. It is worthy of praise. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, the Duchess once again raises her eyebrow in surprise. Cassius likes this. Compliments from all the maids in the room pour in like an endless river. The Duke is bound to fall in love as soon as he sees his mistress in this dress. Lena looks proud, while the rest of the maidens still can't get away from Urania. This is the real beauty power of a lady. Thinking about everything that is happening, the beauty notices that it is the first time she has seen such an unusual reaction. The card will fall on the other side, and since the blonde has been reborn, perhaps she will be able to become worthy of being respected by the servants. Things began to change little by little, and it was undeniable that these events were not bad at all. It gives pleasure to treat oneself this way. The single most important responsibility right now is making to-do lists. Since the maiden is the Duke's wife, it means she needs to get down to business. Sitting at the table, the heroine is sorting through some pieces of paper. She has a lot of free time, so it's worth checking out some documentation. The servants here always relied only on the orders of Cass, but in his absence, no one knew what to do or what was worth doing. This is extremely sad, because on top of all this, there is neither a head butler nor a head maid in the house. There is nothing surprising here. The young couple did not appoint anyone here, and the servants completely rely on them. Calling the man over, the lady asks his opinion. She needs at least 3 candidates for the positions of butler and maid. Venster remained calm until Urania announced that after this, all servants would have to cast their vote. He exclaims, not believing that the mistress wants to leave the choice to the servants. The young maiden only smiles from the corner of her mouth. The heroine assures that she would gladly do it herself, but she doesn't know anything about it, which means it would be right to do it differently. The servants themselves will have the right to choose the one who appeals to them most. There is no choice, and so be it. The guy doesn't even dare to blink, continuing to stare out the window. He likes this kind of order, but no one knows how it will end. Clasping her hands, the girl gives the butler another smile when he unquestioningly agrees to carry out the order. Several hours had already passed since the girl began her attempts to sort out the papers. It really is extremely tiring. The servant knocks on the door and then enters with a tray in his hands. He notifies the lady about the letter, which is addressed specifically to her. Opening the letter, it turns out that it was sent by Madame Phoebe. At the entrance to the White Eagle, all you have to do is say your name, and she will be let through. Surprise, but at the same time, joy envelops the blonde's consciousness. I can't believe Lillian invites her to prescribe treatment. Lighting one of the candles, the lady burns the paper so that there is no evidence. It seems that what was said at the party was very helpful. Lena is in complete confusion, running around and asking why this was done. Trying to calm her interlocutor, the woman switches to Venster, saying that she needs a carriage. Very soon, there will be a road to another estate. The White Eagle estate is called that way, probably because of the snow-white interior. Even the floors are polished to a high shine in a beautiful color. The mistress and the maid go inside, looking around, as if trying to understand what exactly is happening here and where to look for the right person. A butler materializes near the entrance and asks what brought the Duchess here. Madame Phoebe invited her. Realizing that these are guests who have been waiting for several hours, the girl offers to follow her to get to the right place. Turning to Lena, the lady asks to wait for her here, and all questions about security are refused, since it is definitely absolutely clean here. A beauty in a hat walks around the estate, waiting to meet the doctor. You can feel the excitement, But this is only because everything will finally be resolved. Approaching the desired door, the lady appears in all her glory. Only 5 minutes had passed since her arrival,